Welcome, viewers of Beyond Phrenology, to episode 39. 39 is not a prime number, but it's a good number. So we are here with Professor Sutirth Dey from ISER Pune, Indian Institute of Science Education Research Pune. Me and Professor Sutirth Dey know each other for more years now than when I was with him. So I've spent more years knowing him than I spent without knowing him almost. So that's how old we know each other. Okay. Fun fact. I was an undergrad at ISER Pune and a troubled kid. And as we discussed in the last episode, it was Professor Sudeep sir who basically was instrumental in making sure that I graduate and become a functional human being. So welcome, Professor Sudeep sir, or I normally call Sudeep Professor Sudeep as Sudeep sir. So welcome, sir, to Beyond Phrenology. We'll carry our own
Thanks,
tradition.
Madhur. Thank you, Madhur. Thanks again for having me. And I think you kind of undersell yourself when you say that you were a troubled kid. Yeah. I don't think you
Okay.
were a troubled kid. You were a normal thinking kid. See,
Okay.
lots of kids don't think.
Mhm.
Okay. But you were thinking. And when you think, then obviously at that age, there are several things which don't make sense. And
Yeah.
those were the things that we discussed.
But I think I was thinking too much at some points, and had it been today, I would have not graduated. So, so in retrospect, it seems a little troublesome.
Yeah, those were different times,
Yeah,
17 years back.
exactly. Yeah, 17 years back. Uh, that's how far I am from adulthood, right? And you were at that time much younger than what I am today.
Yeah, both of us were younger at that point
Yes,
of time.
yes, yes.
Huh.
So, sir, I mean, we discuss a lot about science. I think we discuss every time we are on call, we are discussing science, and we discuss
Hmm.
so much about science in the last podcast. All our motivations, passions, and how
Hmm.
the landscape of research looks like. What are you seeing right now? Uh, is science and the scientific enterprise very similar to what it was like 17 years back when we were entering and you just had your faculty position, being started, or things have changed over time in how we do science, what kind of science we do, what kind of resources are available at our disposal, and in general, the research environment and the ecosystem.
Well, it's hard to say anything. I mean, 17 years is nothing, right? It's less than a blink of an eye in some sense.
Uh, yes,
Hmm.
unless we start talking about the AI revolution, which is,
That is even more recent. Yeah, that's
that's
a
true.
different thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So, see, one of the things that I won't say it has happened in the last 17 years, but it is
Mhm.
probably something a little longer time frame than that, that the pressure on researchers has gone up drastically,
Drastically.
and funding has shrunk all over the world across all
Hmm.
societies. And therefore, it's a very peculiar situation. You take off the fuel line and you expect people to burn brighter. And you know
Yeah,
so they
that's
expect
uh,
us to dance, and they jam us into iron pants
that's
that
a
way.
lovely description of the whole situation in general. Like
That
beautiful.
Ernst Hemingway, it better be lovely. I
Oh,
just quoted
okay,
Hemingway.
okay. Yeah, but that's true. That's true. I mean, right now, I think in general, the expectation is that we have our own solar panels to produce our own electricity and do research, right? I mean, with that analogy, there's no fuel supply.
If it were just solar panel, I would have been perfectly happy. Okay,
Yeah.
one can somehow just get the solar panel. It's more like, you build your own lab, and you get
Mm.
your own students, and you get your own money for everything.
Yeah.
And by the way, also do all the administrative work that needs to be done on the sides. And
Mm.
after all of that, you also be super productive.
Okay, so
And
there's a lot of thing here. Okay, let's
yes.
unpack it a little.
Hmm.
Let's start with the financial resources needed to do research.
Hmm.
Okay, and we can start with this idea that are we scientists? So we are academic scientists, which means that we are at universities or institutes focused on education and research. We are not working in a corporation, R&D department. which means that we are supported by one way or the other, taxpayers' money, right? So are we in an entitled situation, and are we being entitled when we say that this is the situation? I mean, one can make an argument that you are being fed and you are being given a salary, and just do research. So why is an obligation on taxpayers to fund us?
See, every position has its own mandate, right? So even within the government setup,
Yeah.
there are positions which are supposed to, so for example, work on eradicating malaria in an Indian context, or work on improving the yield of the this crop or that crop, or work on making the crops more resistant to diseases, and so on and so forth, right? So if one is working in those areas, then your mandate is extremely clear, and why you are doing it is extremely clear, and why the money is being given is also extremely clear. Now, at the same time, you have basic sciences. And in the context of basic sciences, everybody understands that it's not 100% clear where exactly, which innovation or which discovery is going to become the next big money spinner or next big whatever, right?
Yeah.
Now, the society has to take a call on whether and how much it wants to value this kind of basic research, which doesn't turn into something useful or something financially rewarding right next, in the next moment. Now, if a society decides that it is not going to spend any money on basic science and spend all money on applied sciences, it's perfectly within its right to do so. But then it has to give up on certain things. For example, it has to give up on all the benefits that one accrues from investment in basic sciences. It has to give up on the hope that okay, we are going to get the next few Nobel laureates coming from this country or this society.
Yeah.
Okay, it has to essentially also give up on certain kinds of thinking. See, when you are doing a very applied research, you are thinking in a certain way. When you are doing a basic research, you are thinking in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And the scientific workforce of any country requires both kinds of thinkers. You cannot really say, I will only have people who are, pure problem solvers of, these 10 problems that I think are important for my country. And that's it. I don't want anything else.
Yeah.
If you do that, then essentially you are hyper specializing your scientific workforce. And at some point, when the 11th problem or the 12th problem will come, at that point you will have nobody within your ranks to tackle that problem. At that
Yeah,
point,
we will not have human capital as well. We will not have those scientific concepts which become the bedrock of that applied research, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Applied research is highly specialized.
Yeah.
And in order to go there, you need certain kinds of training, lot of which is actually coming from basic research.
And also, science is very cultural and generational.
Yes.
We kind of learn a lot from our mentors and environment, and that's why some institutions are great institutions, others are not, despite having similar kind of funding and resources.
Exactly.
Because of the tradition.
You cannot turn on and turn off scientific research at a given moment by pushing in or pushing out. Okay, you can turn it off by cutting off the money. I fully agree. But when you want to turn it back on,
it's not easy.
You cannot simply say, hey, here is $1 million and now start working on this.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that.
Okay. So there is a momentum, and that momentum is societal, that momentum is cultural. And once that momentum gets broken, getting back into that momentum again takes its own sweet time. There's nothing you can do about it.
It's so ironic at multiple levels how scientists in general are perceived. And I understand that there have been politicization of science and things. And the scientists have to live up as well, in certain regard and correct themselves as a scientific enterprise. But at the same time, if you think about how much science is being funded, not just in India, Germany, China, US, but I mean across the world, it's tiny fraction. It's a rounding error in any country's budget, rounding error. Okay. And an average scientist is not even like a upper middle class. We just somehow make through in science, like it's not like it's a lucrative field, especially compared to the number of hours you work. An average scientist works, it'll probably come down to minimum wage in most societies. So it's not a luxury in the sense of accumulating personal resources, a luxury in the sense of being able to be in a playground where actually you can test ideas and explore the world. So that
Yeah.
was first, yeah.
No, see, the point is like this.
Mhm.
Again, people who allocate resources
Yeah.
typically allocate them on the basis of what in corporate lingo is called ROI, return on investment.
Mhm.
I give $100, how much do I get back?
Yeah.
Okay. And by what we discussed, scientific, basic science investment is precisely the kind of investment where the ROI is not that clear, and the ROI has a much longer time frame.
Yeah.
Obviously, short-term gains always win over long-term gains. Period.
Yes. Yes. Which also talks about, the lack of long-term vision of the leadership in general.
Yeah, but that's how life is. One just has to get used to it.
Yes. So that was the first, kind of delusional thinking. Second is how much it takes to do science. So, for instance, you look at a Bollywood movie or a Hollywood, a blockbuster, and you look at their budgets and how much those movies gross. There's nothing in science that even compares to that. So the irony is that the society, as its value, is willing to happily invest, okay, on that particular amount as a society, and that benefits only a few individuals, in terms of monetary gains, like few individuals actually become millionaires and multimillionaires. Uh, and then when it comes to science, there's not a willingness, like it is in, for instance, movies and sports, until you actually have an issue in life, for instance, cancer, then you really want the best drugs available and you want them to be the cheapest possible. But at the same time, you in the past 20 years might have not invested and be willing to invest on cancer research, in a particular country or for a particular disease kind of cancer. So the expectations versus, what we invest on science in general, both at the basic and applied levels also, there's a big gap between that.
Just one sec, let this sound pass. No, see, the question boils down to who's doing the investing. Okay. So, for example, in the Hollywood movie example or the Bollywood movie example that you gave, the money is being put up by the studios. And they know that within a very short span of time, 1 year or max 2 years or so, sometimes even less, either they will get the money back or they will have a loss, whatever, but everything gets done within that period of time. Okay. There is nothing like, oh, I may get a lot of money over a span of 20 years, but at the same time, I may not even get back that money over 20 years. Who knows? If you get into that kind of a thinking, or if you get into a scenario where the return from a movie is along that axis, no Hollywood or no Bollywood studio is ever going to invest. Okay. So any private enterprise which needs its money to, flow and float in very short spans of time, they are the only ones who will do that kind of investment. Which is why investment in research can never really come from private funding. It has to come from the government funds, which takes a much more long-term view of the whole thing and says that, look, I fully understand that I'm not going to get a return, next year or the year after that, or maybe even the next 10 years. But at some point, if this leads to a drug for cancer or a drug for whatever disease, or it simply leads to a workforce which increases my probability of getting a drug for cancer, that is good enough.
Right.
Okay, that is a society level thinking, and that society level thinking is something that only a government can do.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that the only money that the government has is tax money. The
Yeah.
government has no other money, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, if the government thinks along this axis,
Mm-hmm.
then the only money it can spend
Yeah.
will be tax.
Yeah.
And then you get into this question, why is taxpayers' money being spent on something which is not giving me a return right away?
Yeah.
Because then you are comparing itself with the private individuals or the private things. So the only other people who can do it are philanthropic organizations. And
Yeah.
philanthropic organizations do make some
Yeah.
long-term investments.
Mm-hmm.
But even there,
Yeah.
philanthropic organizations, I mean, given, okay, different
Huh.
philanthropic organizations have different timelines there.
Yeah.
Some of the philanthropic organizations do have short timelines.
Mm-hmm.
They are the ones who, again, behave like Hollywood studios.
Mm-hmm.
There are other philanthropic organizations who have longer timelines, and they are the ones who behave like governments.
Yeah.
So, see, the problem with any government is that it has to answer to its people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if it has to answer to its people, the people are always going to ask short-term questions and demand answers which are working in the short term.
But science comes the first on the chopping block always, right? It's a rounding error, generally speaking, right? But at the same time, it's the first thing we target whenever we have a resource crunch. Okay. I
Yes,
mean,
because that is because, again, the long-term thing, right? So, for example,
yeah.
suppose
Mm-hmm.
cutting down on medicine,
Mm-hmm.
okay, government hospitals, let's say, is obviously going to give you back more dollars, save you more dollars, or save you more rupees.
Yeah.
Okay, but then the moment you do it, the number of people who get affected are much higher in the short
But,
term.
but I think if looked, closely, I think we can find 100 different places where government can cut budgets than science and not lose on anything.
That's exactly what the DOG people are saying, right?
Yeah.
In the US, that's
Yeah.
precisely the point that DOG is making.
Yeah.
And look at the amount of commotion that is leading to in the society.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, we do it at our home, right? Like, for instance, our own budgeting, if we do it closely, we will figure out a significant amount of wastage, in our homes. It might be like, food rotting in the fridge sometimes, or it might be, some extra clothes, or it might be, leaving a heater on or something like that. So, and I think that cut would itself be much, much larger than the science budgets of most, forget developing, but even developed nations.
See, it all boils down to how many people it is affecting.
Hmm.
Okay. The lesser the number of people it is affecting, the easier it is to make that cut.
That's very true.
Okay. Now, science or scientific research, particularly basic scientific research, is obviously affecting very little number of people
Yeah, in the short run.
in the short run. Yes, obviously. So in the short run, they are the first ones, or among the first ones to get the chop.
Hmm. Right. So why is it that, or is it still true that despite all the adversities, and how long it takes to actually become a scientist, you are basically, I mean, for instance, Indian context, you are in a, preschool or a prep school while you're 2.5 years old, and then you're preparing for the entrance examination of your local Montessori school or, any good, public school, for 2 years, and then you get into that. Then you do your high school, and by the time you are in class ninth, you start preparing for instance, IIT, JEE, or whatever medical examinations are there. Then before finishing that, you are preparing for another exam for PhD or applying for competitive applications in abroad. Then you do your PhD, but things are not over. You have to do a postdoc. You become a scientist, and as soon as you're an assistant professor, now you are on another 10-year cycle where you have to get a big grant to get a tenure, right, and start an independent project. So it takes fair amount of time. You're almost in school for like more than 30 years mostly. So given that context and given the lack of funding and given that it's not even a lucrative job and given the number of hours you work, often 16 to 18 hours a day, why should somebody come to science? I mean, and who would ultimately end up coming to science given, if these kind of constraints continue?
Okay. Let me ask you a different question.
Hmm.
if you think about sports, okay, elite sports like cricket or basketball in the US context, the number of people who become stars and earn lots of money are very few.
They're actually pretty close. The probability is pretty close to becoming a tenure track faculty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the number of guys who are trying to do it is much larger, right? And by the way, a sports star, the shelf life of those people is actually much less. By the time you are hitting 40, you need to retire.
They age like milk and we age like wine. Yes.
Right. So, but the point is, still a huge number of people are doing it, knowing fully well that many of them will probably not even be able to, become a NBA star or a IPL cricketer or whatever. Correct. So, why exactly do they do it? I think there are two things over here. One obviously is the risk thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's worth taking a risk, particularly when you don't have an alternative. Taking a risk works. So, in the context of science, actually, or in the context of academics, the risk is actually relatively less. Because if you are doing a PhD and if you're not getting an academic job, you at least should be able to get other kinds of jobs.
Yeah, the fallbacks are safer.
There are a few fallbacks. They exist.
Yes.
If you are training for elite sports, you have nothing else.
Right.
Isn't it? If you are trained as a cricketer, there is no other job for you.
We have seen colleagues, peers who were in that zone, and finally, there was no option, than to start some small scale business. Yeah.
Exactly. So the point is that given all this, why do people do what they do? Right. That's the question that you are asking.
Yeah.
And the point is that some people are crazy. Some people want to do want to lead their life in a certain way, and some people have requirements which they think they will be able to meet with a relatively less salary, and therefore they say, okay.
You have to be crazy because neither the monetary rewards are that high nor Bollywood actresses are lining up for you. So you know what I mean? So from an evolutionary standpoint,
No. You are assuming that those are the only two things that people want in their life. Lots of money and Bollywood actresses. There are other things, right? There are lots of people who just want a family. It doesn't need to be with a Bollywood actress or
no. Of course. But I'm talking about the probability of those non-Gaussian events happening, in sports. Is very high, right, compared to science.
True.
The richest scientist
the richest scientist won't be able to afford a Ferrari probably. The richest cricketer will definitely be able to
maybe the poorest can also.
So high level elite sports is more binary. You either win or you lose. There is nothing in the middle. Whereas academics at least has something in the middle. Even if you don't get into an academic position, or even after getting into an academic position, you don't do research that attracts billions of dollars of fund. Even then you can exist. There is a zone where there is a niche for you. So lots of people are okay in those niches, and you always have this hope that maybe someday I'll be able to do something.
So think you are an evolutionary biologist, right? And I don't want to give a lot of credence to evolutionary psychology, but let's think a little evolutionary here, right? You are a sportsman, and most of the sports are basically hitting a ball by your part of your hand or part of your feet or like something else, objects of different kind to hit balls of different kinds. Okay, we can categorize most of the sports in those things.
That's a great definition of sports.
Right? Okay, and when you don't have a ball, you have an opponent. Where you don't even have a racket, you basically punch one way or the other, right? So
you also have chess, but okay, I get your point.
I mean, we don't have chess players riding around Ferraris, generally speaking, and not as many people watch them as well. With
no. Right now, chess is hot. I don't know about the US. In India, chess is hot.
No, right now chess is hot everywhere. It's still a niche. Okay.
It's a niche. It's a niche.
But let's take away that exception for now. So then you have and I'm not demeaning sports and people watching sport, but just thing. So now you have people hitting, with something with something, and then you have these scientists, let's say, who are making this mind-boggling discoveries, things that were inconceivable. The fact that I'm, in US right now at night, and you are in India, in Pune right now in daytime, and we are talking live at this speed, okay, and everything is being recorded. I can see you the way you look like, I can hear you the way you sound, right? This is magical. In the grand scheme of things, we are living in an unprecedented time, and we take it for granted, right? It's sheer magic. And this is all out of basic, followed by, heavy technical science and also corporations and everyone investing on it. So if you go back, there are some people who are taking these ships and exploring other parts of the world, finding an island when at a time when there was no GPS, there was no technology, just on a wooden boat. They were, thousands of miles. They don't know the direction. And then there were these people who were hitting the balls or hitting the trees or whatever. So how come that one big thing became so attractive, and so much, resource sucking, or got the ability to, attract those resources compared to the ability to explore the uncharted territory, whether it can be a algebra theorem, whether it can be a island, or whether it can be a new discovery of, some laws which will change the world. So where did this attraction came from for that activity compared to this unknown?
See, it is about money. It was about money. So, for example, many of those exploratory voyages that you are talking about,
Yeah,
who exactly were funding them?
of
They
course.
were being funded by the kings
Yes,
and the queens.
yes,
And why were they being funded? They were being funded so that once they go there, they claim those lands in the name of the king and the name of the queen, and then those lands are colonized, and then the resources of those lands are plundered and brought back.
yeah. Mhm.
So there people directly saw the potential monetary benefits of it,
Yeah.
and therefore they were willing to bet on it by providing money to these voyagers.
Mhm.
Right now, wherever people can see expected returns, the money is plentiful. I mean, look at AI research for right now.
Mm.
If you are into AI research,
Mm.
as of this moment, you are a hot commodity. People are going to poach you with millions, and I don't know how much salary they get, but definitely more salary than either you or I get.
Yeah.
Okay. So similarly, I don't know. So whatever is the latest hot technology, quantum. I hear that quantum computing is the latest thing right now. So
Mm.
I'm sure all quantum guys are being pursued by all
So
kinds of
so
people
so
and
so
good
it
salaries.
so it's like, what is perceived as hot, and whether you are feeling, you are in that zone right now or not. It's like it's a temporal
Exactly,
fit.
because see, people who have money to spare,
Yeah.
they want their return now.
Yeah.
So that's how
Mhm.
it is. That's exactly
Okay.
how it is. It is sounding very, very, pessimistic, and of course, it is pessimistic. But that's what life is. That's what time is.
I mean, but okay, I see your point. I mean, I think then we need like more probably venturing scientists. So like I am that, that explorer, and just invest on me. I mean, ultimately we are trying to do that, right? With every grant, basically we are trying to convince for small amounts of money that I am that explorer who will find that territory, bet on me. With every $1 million NIH grant, that's what I'm trying to do, right? When I'm asking for
That, that's
$1 million.
that's exactly what the process is. You are absolutely right.
Right.
Except that when you are writing to NIH, you
Yeah.
are probably hoping to get people who are a little more sympathetic to these kind of
Yeah.
explorations.
Right.
When it comes to trillions of dollars or billions of dollars, whatever, people are more focused on where they want their money to be put.
So sociologically speaking, it's the same. It's the same old world.
Exactly.
Hmm. Not to be stressed about. Things are not changing. The world is still there. Okay.
Things haven't changed too much.
Things haven't
Things
changed too
are the
much.
way they were.
Yeah.
So that's it.
The basic fabric is the same.
Yep.
Yeah. And that explains. So how do you see? I mean, it's also an advantage, right? So, for instance, the whole Yeah. The whole jugaad mindset, or the whole idea of, that scarcity breeds innovation. How much do you think it is applicable to science? I mean, one can say that, the science as an enterprise should also go through these resource crunch environment, just like fasting for cancer
I
cells to
mean,
die and,
if
more efficient
if you
cells
look
to
at
grow.
DeepSeek
Yeah.
right now,
Huh.
this is exactly what happened to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys were starved of high end GPUs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they had less money. They didn't have, I don't know, probably 1/100th of the budget of these big
Yeah.
guys, and they sat down and they did what they had to do
Mm-hmm.
and did an extremely nice job.
Mm-hmm.
So, and similarly, you look at, for example, what happened to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, after 2014, when it became clear to Russia that it needs to fight the West at some point,
Mm-hmm.
what did they do? They sat down with whatever resources they had, which obviously were not, the greatest, because they were not the biggest economy. They're still not the biggest economy in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but they said, okay, let us make our weapon systems and let us make them in such a way that they will do well in war, and they will be cheap, and they can be mass produced, and they can be mass produced locally. So even if
Mm-hmm.
the entire world sanctions us, we should be able to produce our missiles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's exactly what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And look at where it has taken them. Right
Right.
now, the United States and other countries are saying that, okay,
Yeah.
let's stop the war, and let us stop it more or less on your terms.
So by that token, if I am a current graduate, or I'm, let's say, entering science, so at that level, I think I'm safer off in the future. My ability to preserve the possibility of me being able to do science in the future very much depends on what area I go in. So it's a better choice right
Some
now,
extent, yes.
right? To
Unfortunately, to some extent, that is true,
Yeah.
because end of the day, see, somewhere you need to be employed.
Yeah.
Okay, and employment is always going to follow the latest trends.
Mm.
So at some level, it pays to do things that are in vogue right now.
Right.
But then there is a problem to that also.
It
What
fades
is
away
the
very
problem?
fast.
Number one, it can fade away.
Yeah.
Number
Competition.
two, competition, exactly, because everybody else is thinking the same,
Yeah.
right? So if you are doing neurobiology simply because you think neurobiology is hot right now, there are 1,000 other people who are thinking the same, and all of
Yeah.
them are going to come up for the same
Yeah.
positions when they open up. So that is the other thing. So, and the third major thing is that if you only do neurobiology because you think it is hot,
Yeah.
and otherwise it doesn't appeal to you in any significant way,
Mm-hmm.
then it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Because sooner or later, when see, you have done research, I have done
Yeah.
research, so
Mm-hmm.
you know that when you take out all the paraphernalia, there is a point at which it's just you and the problem
Yeah.
and nothing else.
Nothing else.
Okay,
Yes.
and that is when the real fight starts.
Yeah.
Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
problems worthy of attack prove
Mm-hmm.
their worth by hitting back,
Yeah.
and then you hit back at the problem, and then it's a slugfest.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, if you are good and if you have the stamina, you win. Otherwise, the
Mm-hmm.
problem wins.
Yeah.
That's pretty much a description of the scientific endeavor.
Right.
And if you are not in some way or the other suited to the kind of problem that you are doing,
Mm.
then you are very likely to lose that slugfest.
Yeah.
Okay, that is why if you take something only because you think it will increase your employability,
Mm-hmm.
without any consideration of your innate abilities, your innate, I
Yeah.
don't want to use that word, I hate the word passion,
Yeah.
but roughly speaking, your skill set, let's say,
Yeah.
okay, then you are very likely to lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
So my feeling is that one should do a very, to the extent possible, because again, see, these things are happening at an age when you are still maturing.
Yeah.
Okay, you take these decisions very early in life. You take these decisions at a time in life when probably these decisions should not be taken.
Which also we can argue, right? This whole system of, this academic ladder, which is very, very
Hmm.
gradual and very, very set,
Hmm.
from this transitions at specific points in your life, that may not be a good track for society to actually lead to good science.
I fully agree. I
Yeah.
fully agree. And as a matter of fact, that is another reason for which I am saying that the
Yeah.
kind of specialization that
Mm.
ultra applied science leads to is actually extremely bad.
Mm.
Because if you look at good quality scientists,
Yeah.
okay, many of them were actually polymaths.
Okay, so we should discuss the polymathic thing. It's
Yes,
yes.
they did a bit of this, they did a bit
There
of
this
that.
most
They
of the
spoke
legends,
to
yeah.
this guy, they spoke to that guy, and somehow, finally, out of all those things, they synthesized their insights.
Right. Even now, the most prolific, or I would say the most inspiring, at least to me, the scientists I know, they are not just great at with science, or within science, they are great at multiple things. Not just running a unidimensional research program and thinking in like within that box, which has been created by a grant agency or, by their advisors.
Yeah. See, somewhere, this multidisciplinarity and collaborations became a very big thing.
Hmm.
Okay. And I know why that became a big thing, because if you are
Because
thinking of, huh?
because we did not allow polymaths anymore to enter the academia. So the only way
No,
we can
but
artificially,
why don't we have the polymaths? See, the problem is, okay, by the time you came into picture, these things had become, institutionalized.
yeah.
But I remember the time
Hmm.
when the focus was shifting from individual groups to collaborations. So
Hmm.
if you look at, for example, many grants nowadays,
Yeah.
you have to have collaborations. They won't
Yeah.
give you the grant until and unless you
They
are
won't give you
collaborating.
for like weird reasons about collaborations. Yes.
Correct. But the
Yeah.
collaboration is something that is taken as a given,
As a
right? You
given.
have to have it.
Yes.
Huh.
Yes.
Why did it happen? Because at some point, people started thinking that, okay, every little alley in science has become highly specialized.
Yeah.
And therefore, if somebody has to synthesize over the whole thing,
Hmm.
then the only way to do it is to get the various specialists together, make them collaborate, and thereby take scientific enterprise forward.
I'm struggling with this thing with grants, for instance. They want a clinician for every time I have an older population in my grants. But it doesn't work like that. You can't take like add these five different things together and think that five random ingredients just because they are from a particular cuisine and you think that it will be a very delicious food. Uh,
Doesn't work.
it doesn't work like that. Exactly.
Exactly. That is the whole problem. See,
Yeah.
that is where synthesis is such a big thing. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, ask any chemist, right? They will tell you that if you simply take five different elements in a beaker or whatever
Yeah.
and shake it like this, that doesn't lead to a
No.
compound containing all the five elements. You have to
Yeah.
do all kinds of magic to get the five things act
Yeah.
together, right?
Yes.
And it's the same when it comes to scientific ideas.
Hmm.
Okay, it's not just a matter of taking a physics guy and a medicine person and another person and tell them, okay, now work together on this problem. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
We seek out for collaborations, for specific problems.
Huh, exactly. See, the point is that the synthesis has to happen inside the minds of people.
Yeah.
The synthesis doesn't happen on a computer.
As well as in the
Okay,
reviewer's head.
reviewers have to, we shouldn't even talk about it.
Let's not talk about reviewer's head. Yeah.
What
I
happens in the
mean,
reviewer's head
yeah, even if you
these
shoot the
days
reviewer's
is,
head, it will work as good as it is working right now. Yes. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, some reviewers, okay, I guess
Yeah.
every scientist has horror stories about reviewer too. But
Hmm.
anyway, so the point is that this focus on ultra specialization and then collaboration
Hmm.
comes from a very corporate
Hmm.
mindset that, if you need to solve problems, just put three people together, that's it,
Hmm.
in a room.
Hmm.
In some sense, it's coming from the reductionistic point of view.
Hmm.
Okay, here is a problem, here are five reduced views of the problem, put those five reduced views together and something great will happen.
Yeah.
But as all of us, or at least some of us, probably will agree that
Yeah.
that is not the case.
Hmm.
And because that is not the case,
Uh,
okay, I think there is still a lot of scope for individualistic scientists who are working with a very small group, but they're trying to do everything in-house.
Yeah.
Okay. If they need something, instead of running to a collaborator, they are spending 2 years or 3 years to get that skill. But the problem is then such people won't be able to publish. Then they're in trouble.
Right. I mean, there are hurdles at all levels. So, for instance, I mean, the whole chat about this thing has been chatterized, so bastardized. Let's talk about collaborations like networks, right? So we are often like taught as young researchers like network, and people now go to conferences, expensive conferences to network. I've been myself been to like 20 conferences. I've spent probably tens of thousands of dollars in conferences, one way or other. I don't have any collaboration from any of the conferences. I have really long-lasting collaborations from people who I mailed for some reason, probably asking for a problem in their paper or a code. And they grew to an extent that now we have published, like with one collaborator, I've almost published 50 articles. And I saw him for the first time after publishing like 35 or 40 articles together. And I've been to, with my Japanese collaborator, I now every summer I go to Japan, he hosts me and things like that. But it came organically, like without any conscious effort to network. And then
that is the thing with synthesis, right?
Yeah.
When the conditions are right,
yes, it happens.
The synthesis typically just happens.
It happens, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when the conditions are not right, you can do whatever the hell you want. Things will remain separate.
Right.
So I'm not very, traumatized by that. What I'm traumatized by is the fact that the people are insisting that until and unless you have whatever 3 kinds of people in your group, we are not going to give you any money. Okay.
Yes.
That I think is a bigger issue.
But then the way people are dealing with that issue is that they just go out with whoever easiest person with those qualifications are and give them a share in the grant and have them in the grant. That's what almost everyone is doing right now.
See, one has to understand, all said and done, when you are dealing with scientists, you are generally dealing with smart people.
Yes.
You are dealing with smart people who the government has spent money to train them to be smart, right?
Yes.
So, and when you are forcing them to do things that they don't want to do, they will find out a way.
It's so interesting, sir. But by that token, I mean, scientists are some of the nicest, easygoing, innocuous people in society. I wonder about their actual talent to be, to be toxic. Generally speaking, they're pretty innocuous.
See, I have seen enough toxic scientists.
Okay.
I have seen enough moronic scientists.
Okay.
It's a distribution. I mean, all said and done, we are humans, and every single human folly, every single human negative quality, you will find in scientists. And the same about positive qualities as well.
Right. But we cannot assume that we can actually come up with like some kind of rule and somehow it will change because they have enough capacity to give it.
Scientists will, like anybody else, will put their brains towards gaming it. And since they are a section of the population which have been trained to solve these kind of problems, they will probably come up with a solution.
Yeah. Right.
Whether that's, see, again, short term, long term. Okay. You focus on how many papers you are publishing, how much grant you are getting. And you incentivize those things.
You get.
Scientists will try to increase the number of papers.
So how do we incentivize polymathic personalities and more diffused scientific output then? Because the deans have to deal with numbers.
See, again, this is something that the society has to decide. Okay. First of all, the society, and when I say society, I mean government on one hand and maybe philanthropic organizations on the other. They have to take a call on what is it that we want to showcase, or at least what is it that we want to nurture. Okay. Now, they might decide that, okay, we will nurture 2 kinds of organizations. We will nurture organizations on one hand, which will be very application oriented, and we will nurture, on the other hand, some number of people who we think can think in this polymathic way, as you said. And then for those guys, See, again, these kinds of guys, the second kinds of guys, they are probably not the ones who will say, give me $1 million salary. They will probably say, give me a salary, which means that I don't have to do another job to put my kid through the school. This salary should be enough for my basic needs. Okay. Give them to some reasonable degree what they need, and then leave them alone. Okay. Now the problem is that with any kind of governmental supervision, bureaucrats typically are very number oriented people, and bureaucrats typically fail to see that different contexts require different kinds of handling. Okay, again, I'm making gross generalizations over here. There are bureaucrats who can see it, but a lot of them cannot. Okay. So what ends up happening is that the same standards which have been evolved for, let's say, a application oriented institute, those standards get imported for an institute whose job is to nurture the polymaths. And when that happens, you are in trouble. Okay. I mean, the converse is equally true.
Right.
If you go to a highly application oriented scientist and try to judge them in terms of qualities which you want to see in a polymath, they are also going to suffer. The whole idea is one has to make a decision that look, we want two kinds of people, and one has to explicitly segregate these two kinds of institute, and one has to come with very different set of incentives for the two sets.
Right.
It's not very difficult, but whatever.
So related to this, do you think this separation of subjects is any relevant now? So talking about polymathy, for instance, do we still need a different department or an institute for biology and physics, or are we in a time where we just need a single umbrella under which things happen? Because biologists use microscopes, for instance. It's all optics, physics, right? A good understanding of optics makes you a better biologist. Okay. It can.
Yes and no.
It can.
And no, exactly. It can.
Okay, it can. Right. Likewise, a lot of mathematics a lot of biology now is using a lot of mathematical tools, very advanced mathematical tools, right? Or even chemistry. So do you think that we are still? I mean, of course, ISER was a little different, like compared to any other institute in India when it started. It was pretty. It had a vision. Okay. It was light years ahead in terms of the exposure, giving to students across these boundaries. But are these boundaries really relevant now? Or are they relics of the past which are just existing? So if a journal like Science and PNAS can publish from like all disciplines, and it does not have those strict boundaries, why do we have that, in an academic institute?
It all depends on what exactly you are trying to do, because there are certain questions which are easier to handle within the confines of a subdiscipline, whereas there are other questions which are better handled with, again, I know it's a abused term, but better handled with a transdisciplinary way of thinking, right? So I mean, think about it. The way a physicist gets trained is determined by the way the subject has evolved.
Right.
Whereas the way a biologist gets trained is determined by the way that subject has evolved. Okay. So if you try to mix everything right at the beginning, I think it's going to be a problem.
Okay.
Because certain guardrails need to be there in the initial stage while the training is getting imprinted in your head. And once the training has become imprinted in your head, once you understand what is what, that is the time when you take off those guardrails and you explore things more freely.
Okay, so there are different implications for education and life as scientists. So for instance, if I am a neurobiologist,
absolutely,
I would gain a lot if the next door is not actually a cellular biologist, but for instance, a topological theorist. Okay. Like, no?
There's a look. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Okay, but that is peculiar to your kind of thinking. So, for
Hmm.
example, I'll talk to you about our own ISET Pune biology. Okay,
Yeah.
you know that we have a very diverse biology department.
Yeah.
Okay, we have people doing very different kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Very rarely found, yes.
Very rarely found.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have it.
Yeah.
And one of the complaints that
Hmm.
some people have is, hey, I don't have sufficient number of people to discuss my kind of things.
Hmm.
Okay, I need an expert in topic X. Okay, another lab in topic X to discuss my stuff, and because I don't have that, I feel very left out, I feel very lonely, etc., etc.
Although I would argue that even if when you are so specialized, even in the same department with 10 such people, it will be hard to discuss that. But yes.
No, but the point is
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
requirement is there.
Right,
So
right,
I
right.
think it all depends on how exactly you are visualizing yourself. Okay,
Hmm.
if you are a person
Hmm.
who thinks about width, if you
Hmm.
are a person who is explicitly trying to make those transdisciplinary connections, then sure, as a neurobiologist or as a brain person, having a topologist right next to you is awesome, or
Yes.
for that matter, a graph theorist.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
but if you are a detail oriented person who
Hmm.
is trying to figure out, okay, hey, this experiment is not working out, what
Hmm.
can be the possible reason for this,
Yeah.
what possible changes can I make in my buffer, or what possible changes can I make in my instrument,
Yes.
then actually you are better off discussing this with another experimental neurobiologist.
Hmm.
Correct, because that person probably has
Right.
encountered and sorted those problems out. So
Right.
I would say that it entirely depends on your self realization or your self visualization,
Hmm.
that what kind of science you are trying to do, what is more important for you. And I would think that it's probably a good idea to have a little bit of both sides.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
have
as
one
a
or two people of your type and a
yeah.
few people of the other type.
And as a society, then also you need to have very specialized institutes, extremely specialized, as well as more, diffused institutes with diffused
I
kind of.
fully agree. See,
Yes.
if you are trying to figure out everything about the brain,
Yeah.
okay, and that's all you want, then I would say that within the same institute,
Hmm.
you have lots of people who are doing very hard, experimental work about brain,
Yeah.
and a few guys who give a whiff of fresh air, so to speak. Okay,
Right. Right.
they are doing work which are relevant to the brain.
Hmm.
But in that institute,
Yeah.
do I necessarily need to have somebody, let's say, I mean, I'm just taking a name. I don't know whether
Yeah.
number theory relates to brain research or not, but
Yeah.
assume for a moment that it does not.
Yes.
That in that case, do I need a number theorist in that
Yeah.
mix?
And by
Probably
that
not.
choice, you have already kind of deterministically, created a box, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. So everybody has to take decisions,
Hmm.
and everybody has to understand the consequences of those decisions and stick to it.
Right.
Okay. There's nothing wrong in having highly specialized stuff,
Hmm.
but then say so.
Yeah.
And then if you have invested in that, don't ask for people with polymathic personalities. It's not going to happen there.
Yeah. Or that kind of outcome as well.
Or that kind of outcome as well. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The problem happens when you specialize in one thing and you pine for the other one.
To be honest, how much we fund science and how much we expect from them is like also pretty far off. There's a big gap in between that as well. Yeah.
True. But then
Okay.
that's see, the problem is that suppose you are funding a battery person,
Hmm.
and then you simply tell the battery guy that, hey, I need a 10% improvement
Yeah.
in the performance of my battery.
Yeah.
It's a very nicely calibrated goal,
Hmm.
and the battery person might say, okay, after 5 years, I'm sorry, I haven't been able to do 10%, but I have at least done 5%, or I have
Yeah.
at least done 7%.
Yeah.
You can very nicely see that what was your goal, to what extent the goal has been met, and so on.
Yes.
So those
Yes.
are very nicely countable.
Yes.
With a basic science guy who is, let's say, trying to understand consciousness,
Hmm.
What are you
Right.
going to say?
Yes.
Okay, the guy will never be able to tell you that I have understood 70% of consciousness, or I have understood 20% of consciousness, or whatever.
Right.
So that's it. The moment it becomes unquantifiable, the goal becomes unquantifiable, success
Mhm.
itself becomes unquantifiable. And that's when people who have money, who only understand quantities, they develop cold feet.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset issue, nothing else.
Yes. You're right. You're right about that. Okay. There's something I wanted to ask related to this. It's just a slip of the mind that no, I think it was about fund. I think it was related to funding. I think we need to switch the topic because I completely lost track of. I think it was a very important question, relevant to this.
Sure,
Uh,
come back to it if you remember.
yeah. Give me a few seconds. Maybe this happens, and biologist has to figure out, why some things get lost and it suddenly appears out of nowhere, especially when you stop thinking about it.
Train of thought.
Yeah. So, train of thought. Yeah. Okay. So, sir, what is uh, how do you think that it has changed the okay, this was the question. So you
Hmm.
mentioned, when I said that let's unwrap this, you mentioned about in more work, you mentioned a lot of administrative work which we also have to do as scientists, and it keeps increasing. Okay, it has not reduced. Given all the softwares we have, given all the technology we have, there are more logins, so you forget your passwords more often, which means that you have to get those forget password mails more often. Editorial managers still do not have a single login. Every time you get a new review, it makes a new account where they ask you, where are your assistant professor, what's your qualification. I mean, you should know my qualification if you send it to review to me, right? Eh, so those kind of things as well. So in the grand schema, how is it that we have more administrators on every campus? Okay, and we know, from stats that there's more administration now. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but we have more administration now on every campus. It has grown several times fold compared to professors, or teaching staff. So how is it that we have more administrative staff, but at the same time, we have more administrative work as scientists? And it is
Because the
also not,
administrators have not been hired to make your job easy. The administrators have been hired to make the running of the institute more streamlined, transparent, whatever you call it. And in order to do that, they think that they need all the information at every single step.
yeah,
Now, obviously, they do not want the time to enter all that information.
yeah,
So, first of all the information is needed.
yes.
And second, I mean, think about it now. I mean, when you register for being an author on most journal things, they ask you so many stuffs that you wonder why do they need that information.
So some journals have become so annoying, like so annoying, like for instance, American Physiological Society journals. There's so many times. I mean, it's the shittiest, portal. I mean, American Physiological Society, either you will not publish anything for me or do something about it. The amount of information they ask and the portal is so bad that if you make a mistake, it gets stuck, for instance, and then you have to start a form from the beginning. Okay,
Ouch.
and now you have to. They don't even need an IRB. They need a contact person's information who has approved my study. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, probably not for this one. I'm not sure whether it's American Physiology, but several journals now I encountered. So the thing is
Mhm.
that first you have to get a permission to study, to do a study, which is itself a very highly bureaucratic process, takes months. And then now finally everything is ready. And if I'm working at a university, for instance, university makes sure that we live by the rules. Already there are people in place. We don't do any rule breaking. And now journals want that information as well. So, and those things keep on adding. So okay, so that's a different question. Sorry about the rant, but yeah. But how is it that solving? Because the institute wanted to do good research, so they bought the scientist, under the roof. Then they wanted the institute to run smoothly, so they brought the administrators to run it smoothly. But if it takes away 30% of your research time, then how does it suit anyone?
It suits the institute. The institute is running fantastic.
No, but institute was supposed to run for science, right?
No, the institute was supposed to run. See, there is this magnificent BBC series called Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. I must have spoken to you about
Yeah, you
it.
mentioned. I need to watch that. Yes.
Please do. Please do.
Okay.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in one of those episodes, I forget which one, probably Yes Prime Minister, I think.
Yeah.
They find out that there is a hospital which is employing a few hundred staffs but doesn't have a single patient. Okay, so the minister calls the chief bureaucrat, Sir Humphrey Appleby, and asks him that, Sir Humphrey, please explain to me that how can you have a hospital with these many number of administrators and not a single patient? And then Sir Humphrey goes on to give a massive list of all the job that all those guys are doing, and basically makes the case that, look, it's not that work is not happening. A lot of work is happening.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone is working.
Everyone is working, and they're working extremely hard. Where are the patients?
Yeah.
And Humphrey says, almost like, who cares?
Yeah, right.
So the problem is that with that many number of administrators, the institute has taken a life of its own. Okay, the scientists are just one reason for them to
institutes to exist, to justify the existence.
See, that is the whole problem.
Yeah.
Okay. As a scientist, you think that the institute exists because of, in order for the science, and since you are the guy doing the science, it should be, you should be the primary person. The institute administration probably thinks in a very different way. The institute administration thinks that if we are not there, okay, you will not be able to do anything that you are doing.
You're right about that. Yeah.
And therefore, you better listen to us and not the other way around.
That makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense. This sociology needs to be, well studied. I mean,
it has been extremely well studied. There are books on that.
I mean, I know about one called Bullshit Jobs, for instance. It's one of my favorites.
That's the greatest. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's. I mean, the author is amazing. It was amazing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish he was alive. I mean, he would have seen a lot more changes, and maybe he would have written a sequel called More Bullshit Jobs.
Right.
Or bullshitest jobs or something like that.
Bullshitter jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So this is very interesting because one can say that for instance, in my case, I'm getting more productive day by day in terms of my scientific output, but that's not because of my ability to be to have less or overload. It's because I work more hours. And I have subscribed to some external tools. We are living in an unprecedented time with, with softwares and stuff like that. And your ability to manage files, streamline things and be more time efficient than actually the administrative load. Because the amount of, you do one journal submission, let's say it gets rejected 3 times. You have spent like several hours just for submitting articles, the same article at 5 places, or, and thank God that I don't have a group with like 50 authors. Right.
So then you will have to hire somebody just to submit the papers.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, there are groups which have those people. They are called administrative assistants or whatever.
You need to have, yeah.
Yeah, you do.
So
and you also need to keep a track of where all your papers are. Because there are lots of journals who nowadays take 4 to 6 months, sometimes even more. And you have to remind them 5 times before they do something about your paper, right?
Yeah. It's with the editor, or it's not even sent to the editor sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So who's going to keep a track of all that stuff in a big group? I'm sure they have assistants.
I have not experienced that, but if it's 50 groups, I don't want to be corresponding author. Please take care. Right? Yeah. Especially when you have students. Okay, this is very interesting. So some journals have a requirement that every author, they need an email ID. If there's not an email ID, they will not.
Almost all journals. All journals.
Yeah. And you had students who have left. You don't know who their contact is because several universities have policies. The email ID is deleted the day you leave. Okay, so now you don't even have an email ID. So the only way to do is you put a fake email ID, or you put an email ID which you make yourself, because if you're not in contact with the author,
No. Oh, okay. No,
how would you
what we
submit
do
then?
is, for all our people in the lab,
Yeah.
we always keep their personal email IDs with us. And we
Okay.
tell them that, when you
Yeah.
leave this place, and if your ICER Pune account, well, we are very lucky because at least at our institute,
Yeah.
they keep the email ID forever.
Whatever. Okay.
Huh. But we do have this thing in place that we keep the personal email IDs with us,
Yeah.
and we tell them that if we lose contact,
Yeah.
okay, actually, see, but then you have a different problem. If you have already lost contact with that person,
Yeah.
then it's difficult to put them as the author, right? Because the final thing has to be, the final version of the manuscript has to be seen by them.
I understand, but people put it all the time. I see like data published, several years back. I assume that people might be keeping track of it.
No, so what we do in our lab is we always take
Yeah.
and explicitly maintain a record of the personal email IDs.
Yes.
Now, if they change that personal email ID, then there is really nothing that can be done.
No, I know big groups have very strict policies that, we will send you a paper 15 days before submission. If you do not reply within 10 days, we will assume that you are not an author and things like that. You have to put these policies, once you have a larger group and big turnaround of students.
True.
Right. So it's very interesting how administrative staff think. So for instance, I was at Northeastern. I left Northeastern as 31st of July. And at 12 a.m. midnight on 1st of August, all my access and my email ID was shut down, just like a corporation. Okay, everything was shut
So
down.
that probably means that they have a program which did it. Obviously, I'm
Yeah, of course, but
assuming
they have
no
a
admin.
policy. But they have a policy that, once you leave, interesting thing is that the papers you publish, they all want your official ID. My eBay, by the way, I'm still working on Northeastern account. I'm not able to change it. So I still have accounts from that email ID. All I can do is use it unless they ask me to change the password. Okay. So until then, I can keep using that. But what is interesting is that we know that these things happen, but still administrators have decided to cut off the access when everything depends on email IDs, for like journals take 6 months, for instance, counterproductive.
No, I don't think there is any malice in this. Okay, I simply think that most administrators don't even understand how science thing works. So
Yeah,
I'll give you one
exactly.
example. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
I once went for a progress review meeting in one of the
Yeah.
funding agencies, Indian
Huh.
government funding agencies,
Huh.
and in front of an entire room full of experts, etc., the administrator points at me and says, "You have published 4 papers from this project. You have not acknowledged us a single time." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I have explicitly acknowledged you guys in every single paper of mine.
Yeah.
You have to come and show us where the thing is." Okay. And this is like, they have stopped the proceedings to say this to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the chair of the proceedings says that let us continue with the proceedings, and you just go to one corner and show them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I go there. So these guys have taken printouts of all the PDFs that I have sent them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go to the acknowledgement section and say, "Look, the name is not here." So I just turn the pages. I go to the first page. And so there are lots of journals which
Yeah.
nowadays have separated the funding statement from the
Yes, then
acknowledgement
acknowledgement
statement.
section. And it's under the correspondence author or something like that. Yes.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
in this particular case, it was on the first page.
Yeah.
So I show them, "Look, here it is."
Yeah.
And then in the next article, here it is. And in the next article, here it is.
Yeah.
And after looking at this entire thing, this person, "Oh, thank you for letting us know. We also learned so many new things from you guys."
Yeah.
What is this? I mean, you had the PDF, you just had to turn the pages.
What is interesting is that why will we not acknowledge? I mean, you are our bread and butter. Okay. Why would we not acknowledge?
No, so what happens sometimes is,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand their side too.
Yeah.
So they have to show the output from the projects that they have sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many a times what happens is, suppose people have put the same project or very similar projects in 2 funding agencies.
Yeah.
And therefore, they have ended up citing one funding agency and not the other funding agency.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the other funding agency has a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I assume that it is to protect against such things.
Yeah.
That they insist that you show us. Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm
Yes.
perfectly fine with that. And this is something that is stated. All funding agencies explicitly say that you have to, acknowledge us. We sign on that.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm okay with the fact that I have to do it.
Yeah.
But last page versus first page, come on. This you should check on.
But I'll tell you a dark secret. The dark secret of academia, at least of hyper-productive scientists, is that if we just follow that funding rule, right, they will get less papers cited, for the funding. Because, for instance, I work on papers, on my own without anybody's money on my own laptop. I still cite my grants. Okay. So by the way, if we start living by that rule, there will be less of citations for those grants.
That happens in certain kinds of work.
Yeah.
So, for example, you do a lot of theoretical work where
and
this
modeling,
can happen. In modeling. But for empirical work, typically it's a pretty good 1:1 correspondence.
Right. No, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, some things, I mean, we have to be sympathetic to, to the system as well.
No, see, I have spoken with a lot of admin people.
Yeah.
Okay. And I generally, much of the time, I understand where they are coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. If you speak to them properly, over a cup of tea or beer, whatever, depending on the society, they will actually tell you what their issues are. And when they tell you what their issues are, many times you realize, okay, this is
I mean, they are doing it in good faith, but it's a system which has its own soul that has become who knows that whether soul or a demon or whatever it is.
Right. So, I think one of the stuffs that should happen is that administrators should actually spend a lot of time with the people who they are administering. Yeah, in this case, scientists.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That actually leads to a lot of clarification on both sides. Okay.
Right.
So there was a famous story. This is when not my own thing. I heard it from somebody else. So these guys were field biologists, and they were having a lot of problem with one person in finance who was refusing to pass their bills. Okay. And he would come up with all kinds of queries like, why do you need so much of petrol? And why do you need to hire so much of stuff, jeeps and all that? So these guys were having a lot of trouble. So one day they go to this finance guy and say that, sir, you have always been saying that, we just go and enjoy in the field. So we thought that we will invite you to come with us in the field.
Yeah.
And for some strange reason, this guy agrees. So they take him to the field. They wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, walk the whole day, reach their campsite somewhere in the night. Okay, this guy by that time has almost collapsed, etc., etc. So they basically give him a proper understanding of the field life.
Yeah.
And then this guy comes back, and then this finance guy turns into their biggest supporter.
Yeah.
Okay. So then this guy figures out some obscure rules from somewhere saying that if you are working beyond 5 p.m., you are supposed to get overtime. Yeah. So this guy says, oh, but you guys are actually walking in the field, after 5 p.m. Therefore, you should get overtime. Therefore, for all the days that you are on the field, I'll, just submit the claim and I'll sanction your overtime, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
So once this guy gets an understanding of the life that these guys are leading and why is it that they need the petrol, this guy actually becomes sympathetic.
So it's mostly a miscommunication and mistrust.
To some extent.
To some extent.
Yeah. I've seen lots of people whom if you explain what the situation is, they'll go out of their way to help you.
How do we explain to Manuscript Central?
Those are incorrigible people. Those are people with 37% profit margins. They cannot
or editorial manager. So sir, I mean, it's so interesting to be also in a time of funding, in a time of science. For instance, we look at Springer. Most of the journals are turning into open source, like the whole Nature portfolio, and there's a reason for that. When you have sites like Sci-Hub, you want to take money as much as possible to begin with, not after publication, right? So open source model, to be honest, it's not fueled by the idea of free science. I think it's fueled by the idea of taking money first, right? I think that's the basis of open source, right? It's a scam in that way.
Yes.
Now the APCs are rising, right? You have an impact factor is directly correlated to APC. I have not plotted that. Probably somebody would have done, or I might try to plot it. There will be a strong positive correlation between APC and impact factor, right?
Within a subdiscipline, yes.
Yeah, within a subdiscipline. Now, the thing is that if you do wonderful work, let's say, where it is not funded by some really federal grant, first of all, it's not a good idea to convert. For instance, some journals are charging $8,000, right? For us, it's like 3 months of PhD student stipend. Okay. For you, it's a whole year of stipend, right, in India.
A little more than that,
A
probably.
little more than that, right? So that
Yeah, I
amount
have
to
to
produce
compute. Yeah.
basically a PDF, when the PDF which I'm sending them is ad goes sometimes better actually than what they publish. Okay. So now the so you have this administration which looks at your impact factor and your journal and grant agencies and all the scientists themselves to be are blamed for that. They look for that fancy name in your publications, and those fancy names come at a very huge price tag. Okay, which itself de-incentivizing any work which is not funded by big research, big money. Also, it is diminishing the existence or the presence of scientists who are not well funded.
Of course.
Right?
You spend, therefore you are. You don't spend, therefore you don't exist.
Okay. Yes. Right. 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 It's also selection on science. So it's ironic that we want to do more cost efficient science, but the cost efficient science has less of a voice. Right?
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. So,
Yeah. I think this is where administrators need to have a look.
see, the problem is like this.
Yeah.
If you want to address this issue, and I don't blame science administrators alone on this. This is
No.
something
No.
that
Of
even
course.
scientists also need to look at it.
Yeah.
If you are trying to judge quality,
Hmm.
then actually there is no other way to do that except by engaging with that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay? There is no other way.
Yes.
Now, the problem with most scientific articles these days is that forget about the layperson, forget about somebody working in a different area. Sometimes
Yeah.
even people working in that area
Yeah.
find it very difficult to engage with a certain article.
I mean, students in your same lab might not on different projects.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, in that situation, where exactly is the judgment of quality going to come from? And essentially, that judgment of quality has now been given to the journal, the address of the article. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you have published in Nature. This article must be a better article than something that has been published in PNS. Something that has been published in PNS must be better than something that has been published in whatever, say
Yeah.
Evolution or whatever.
Right.
If it were better, then why didn't it go to PNS in the first place? If it were better, then why didn't it go to Nature in the first place? Blah, blah, blah. That's the whole understanding. Okay.
Yes.
So essential, and that is the whole reason for which people are willing to pay these APCs too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
because people
yes.
know nobody is going to read that stuff. Okay.
Right.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
the final stamp of quality
Yeah.
is not what is inside the paper. The final stamp of quality is where it has been published. Period.
Yeah. I mean, for me, right now in the US, $8,000 is like 1,000 lattes with $1 tip. That's like 3 years of lattes, one each. Okay. I mean, if you think about it, that's what a person is paying to someone to produce a PDF and put a stamp on it. When exactly like Overleaf produces better PDF than most of what these journals are producing, because now they don't even typeset for you. They don't do anything. If you make a mistake or something, it just remains there.
Yeah,
So
there is hardly any copy editing.
there's no copy editing. Proportions of the figures once they publish is like can be something you cannot, there's no second round where you look at proportion of figures. You can have like a small bar chart published as like 6 by 6 figure, bloating in your eyes, something like that. So, and you see this in open source journals more often than paid ones, than subscription ones, overblown figures, or disproportionate figures, because they have also come up with a streamlined process of publishing where it goes into the proofreader and it just comes out of as a PDF, right? So it's very interesting that the landscape of science and the landscape of publishing are also not are disconnected.
Well, I'm going to argue that they are too well connected. Okay.
Incentive wise,
Incentive wise, yes. Yes,
yes.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes,
In terms of
incentivize.
what they're supposed to achieve, no, there is
No.
a complete disconnect.
So there's a soul of the publication process in its own, which has, which is ephemeral compared to the lives of scientists. Like every system is, so interesting, right? Do you think it's an effect of this critical mass, that any of these systems is becoming more than critical mass? It have it becomes having its soul of its own, and the rest just
Oh,
remains.
always. I mean, let me put it this way:
Yeah.
anything that involves money,
Huh.
okay, at some point, people will start asking the question, how do I maximize the money?
Yeah.
And the moment that happens,
Hmm.
the incentive structure changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how
So,
can we
for an
talk about?
example,
Yeah. Yeah.
huh,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go
go
ahead.
go on. So,
So.
one of the things that I was thinking
Mhm.
was that, given all this stuff about the fact that much of the science is actually federally funded in
Yeah.
almost all countries.
Yes. Yes.
What about a completely different system of doing
Hmm.
this?
Hmm.
Let's come up with a simple thinking that anything that is funded by the government,
Yeah.
the final paper,
Huh.
the final manuscript has to be published on a government website.
Which is already there, and all NIH research has to be on PubMed, but most of the time it comes through Nature Communications, for instance, to PubMed.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Its final address is the government website.
Okay.
It's not through Nature Communication and not through any other journal.
Why am Nature Communication? I'm saying because I want to publish in Nature Communications, but I don't have money.
That's a different ballgame.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
No, but I'm saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, Nature Communication is just a placeholder. It can
Of
be
course.
any
Of
journal.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that it should not be through any journal.
Yeah. Right.
It has to be on the government website. For example,
Yeah.
like bioarchive
Yeah.
or archive for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you send your stuff directly over there,
Mm-hmm.
where it stays put for say about an year or so.
Mm-hmm.
During that 1 year, people comment on it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then based on those comments, after 1 year, the authors have an option of changing the paper, making whatever
Mm-hmm.
revisions they want.
Mm-hmm.
And once those revisions have been made, that version becomes the permanent version
Mm-hmm.
and gets a permanent DY.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
a subsequent rule saying that if you are working in an institute which is funded by the government,
Yeah.
then only papers which have been published here in this government website,
Will be counted.
those are the only papers that will be counted, nothing else will be counted.
So it has to be at the federal level, funding level, as well as the institutional level, right? And it can be done with one policy, right?
One policy, just one
Just one
policy,
policy. Yeah.
just one policy. Put your work there,
Yeah.
and only work that is put there
Yeah.
is going to be
It will make
considered,
science so
nothing else.
efficient and so good, because right now everyone is just dying for like those names, right? You
And
really have to
see,
read the paper to hire someone.
why are people dying for the names?
Yeah.
They are dying for the names because they know that when their
Yeah.
tenure committee is going to sit, the tenure committee is also not going to read the papers. The tenure committee will
Of
simply
course.
see where they have been published.
Yeah.
So in one stroke, you just
Yes.
take away the entire thing about where they have been published.
So on that note, very related to this, we also have to, and I'm seeing this change in culture on LinkedIn, for instance. By the way, instead of bastardization, we can say linkedization of things. Okay. I mean, the platform has its value, but I don't know what that platform stands for right now. So, for instance, I've seen this cultural shift. There was a time when, people would celebrate like findings. Like, for instance, in my case, I put a lot of LinkedIn, but I always put like, oh, I found this new thing, or we have a new publication with this finding. I've never put that I've received this grant or this award. For me, that's not a objective. The objective is to do science. Grant is a means to do science. It's not an end. But we are living in a culture now where the success in research is measured by how much $1 million or how many crores actually you are managing as a researcher. So we often have speakers, and the first thing when we introduce me, I don't do that. But normally they get introduced like the person is administering 10 million or the person has been given 20 million in his career, right? that person might have not done with anything with the 12 million, and there might be another person with like 500,000 produce wonders. So right now the system is not incentivizing, you know, uh, good work or per capita investment, return on per capita investment, compared to how much. So you have an incentive to get more and more grants, because that's what is being celebrated right now. I think that's where we need to also have some change in the culture, that we celebrate science and we celebrate advancement, then the ability to
See,
get that money.
again, simple thing. Why is
Yeah,
this happening? This is happening because, again, nobody is reading what you are doing.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
This is happening because people have, just as the address of your article, where it has been published,
yeah.
is a metric of the quality of the article, which
Hmm.
it should not be. Similarly, the impact of your future work
Yeah.
is how much money you have attracted by showing that future work. So
Hmm.
here the underlying assumption is that experts at NIH or whatever funding agency from which you
Yeah,
have gotten the grant, they must have looked at this. They must have found this to be better than so many other people. That's why they have given the money.
yeah.
And that's why they have given so much money. They haven't given you 500,000, they have given you 10
Hmm.
million.
Yeah,
So 10 million is greater than 500,000. Therefore,
yeah. It's like rich
you
people
must be
flaunting
doing
that
better
I've got
stuff.
this. It's very similar to, sir, what, like I mean, people can take pride in that, what, this is a really good purse or wallet, and I just got it for like
Yes,
10 rupees. And
it's
somebody is like, oh, you know what? This wallet is like 50,000 rupees or $10,000. And like, is it
exactly.
stupidity, or is it,
No, it is
like,
signaling. It is
it's
simple
signal.
signaling.
Yeah.
I mean, why is that is the only purpose that luxury goods have.
Yeah.
They are signals.
Yes.
Okay. And that is why when you have copies of those goods which are
Yeah.
so good that nobody can make it out,
Yeah.
that is why who get most upset? More than the guys who are making it, the
Yeah.
guys who have purchased it are the ones who are getting more upset.
Yes.
Okay, I paid
Yeah.
5 lakh rupees to own that Gucci bag, and you have paid only 5,000 rupees. How dare you?
So in
My
that
signal
case,
is getting
is
diluted.
so in that case, so you mean to say that $1 million, like a person with a $5 million grant, would be very jealous of a scientist to publish like some great articles with no funding?
Uh, I don't know whether they'll be jealous or not, but they can always be asked this question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I
Okay.
mean, it makes
So
sense.
no. So,
Yeah.
but think about this. This
Hmm.
stuff that I told. This I've been kind of discussing this with a few people. I want to
Yeah.
write an article on this at some point. If
Yeah.
I think it works out that if we take out the incentives,
Uh,
okay, then I think that will probably make life a lot better for many people.
yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
You still have the right to send it to science. You still have the right to send it to wherever you want to
Yeah.
and get it published over there.
Yeah.
It is just that we are not going to consider that in the context of our funding.
Yeah. Right.
Period.
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, this
Hmm.
government website is something that should be available to everybody in the world. Obviously.
So it already is.
Okay.
It's the infrastructure is actually there. It's a policy
Yeah,
matter
yeah,
which has not been implemented.
I know. So
Yeah.
see, in the context of PubMed, the thing is already there.
Yeah.
Okay. So they are like one step ahead. They just have to announce a policy. In
Right.
the context of India or other countries like India, we have to create the website.
Yes.
But in a country like India, how long will it take to create the website? We'll create it like this, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
One
you
day.
get like five nerds and like some whatever, samosas in Indian
Yeah,
context instead of pizzas, and a couple of
yeah.
beers, and sit in the
That's
morning.
it,
By the
done.
evening, you have the portal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't
Right.
know. I have always thought about this, and I have
Yeah.
thought that this will actually create a very different incentive structure
It
and
it
will
it
end
it
up.
it, it will. I mean, if you know that you will not be judged by where you publish and how much you
Hmm,
publish,
hmm.
what do you live for? I mean, by the kind of salary we get, we'll be in existential crisis, and that crisis will actually brew a lot of good stuff. Right. So, sir, in that
And
case,
I
yeah,
see
yeah,
the
go ahead.
other thing that will happen is
Yeah,
that this will force people to read the papers.
Of course, yes, yes.
And if you know that the paper is going to be read properly, then people will actually be probably a little more careful about it.
A little more careful, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, right now we are giving money for these publications. Basically, they are more like quality assessment people. I mean, I think they should be renamed or something. Just like we are content creators for these journals and not like scientists. We can somebody can argue, for the most part. We can also rename, these journals. So right. Okay. So why do you think where is the most resistance to that? I mean, it's such a simple decision. It can be done overnight, and I'm pretty sure people at Elsevier and Springer would be having nightmares once in a while that this might happen anytime.
They are going to lobby extremely hard against it, and they have the money.
Or maybe they are already lobbying. That's why we don't have this.
Possible, entirely possible.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any other way things have changed? You feel or in a good way?
No, I'm a pessimist. I don't see too many good things.
I was called pessimist as well, in my early times, like when I was much younger. I think pessimists are also the most optimist. I think pessimists are not completely pessimist. Most of the pessimists I know, it takes them a switch to become optimists. I think that
there is a difference between a pessimist and a realist.
Okay.
A pessimist is one who is always negative.
Okay.
A realist is one who understands that most things are negative, but when they see a positive thing, they are able to pounce on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So I would also probably think myself as a realist more than a pessimist.
Right. Okay. But some things which has improved. I think science has democratized more, right? Still over time.
I don't think so. I mean, it depends on which axis you are talking about. See, there are so many areas in which, for example, if you're a taxonomist, you won't get a job because almost no one is hiring a taxonomist. Okay. Therefore, just this decision, overall social decision, which I'm sure nobody has written saying that no taxonomist shall be hired. Nothing like that. It's just a overall societal construct, but that is putting this entire area of study, and it's a very important area.
Which means that we are not discovering any more species.
I mean, we are, but it's just that we are discovering them on the basis of how much DNA is different. Which is a very stupid way of differing. And more importantly, if you give them 10 different plants or whatever, 10 different whichever organism, they will not be able to tell you which species it is.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, taxonomy is a if you read old books of taxonomy, I mean, taxonomists were some crazy people. I mean, the amount of work they did.
Oh, I mean, boy.
Our ancestors did a really, we think of like science had advanced, but in terms of the breadth, the amount of information they collected, curated, categorized was a very different skill.
Yeah. See, right now what is happening is that we are kind of doing the information gathering. We are putting it in some kind of a database, and then that's about it. We are hoping that somebody else will make sense out of it at some other opportune moment. But this entire thing about synthesizing it to come up with insights, it is becoming lesser and lesser. I mean, I know people are making models. The models are supposed to be doing that, but most of the models nowadays themselves are so complex that you don't even know what the hell they are trying to tell you.
I mean, we can go into the epistemology of that, and most models tend to be curve fittings at one dimension or the other.
Most data-driven models,
yes,
that's what they are.
Yeah.
But the problem is the way the curves are being fit.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have figured out how to fit everything.
Exactly. Exactly. GLMM, GAM, GAMM.
It's like we have created spandex. spandex of the
Exactly.
curve fitting, right? No matter, you just go
Exactly.
one size fits all. I think that's one of the reasons
Exactly.
to wear spandex, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look,
Mhm.
many ecology evolution, I mean, that's my area, papers
Mhm.
that I read, when I go
Yeah.
into the statistical analysis section,
Mhm.
I'm like, what the hell is going on
Yes.
over here?
Yeah.
I just don't understand what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, I have spoken to other eco-evo people. Again,
Yeah.
these are the people who actually understand stats to some extent.
Yeah.
And most of them have exactly the same thing to tell me.
Mhm.
Okay. And these are the guys who I know are good in stats. I don't even
Yeah.
want to think about the guys who are not good in stats.
Right. So I often use complex maths. A lot of times I don't provide my codes because not because I don't want to provide. People have with me, collaborators and others. It's just so much of extra work for every publication to create codes and clean them and things like that. So often I don't, but I put the real maths in my papers. So anyone who codes exactly that math step by step will find the same conclusions. Okay, this is what I do. I have reviewed so many papers with complex maths, complex functions, which is very apparent that they must have very several parameters which have to be fine tuned at a particular value. So when you say
Yes.
like we added an epsilon, to make sure that the data was never divided by zero. In some models, epsilon 10 to the power of minus 16 versus minus 4 will lead to drastically different results. So even that small thing. So with no details, and when I ask as a reviewer to provide the codes or to provide the details, people mention, very nice response, flattering response. We understand, in a paragraph and things like that. And like we have privacy concerns or we are working further and we assure that in the future work we'll definitely provide and all these things. And if I reject those articles, writing a mail to an editor, to the editor that, if I can't understand, if I cannot produce, like what is even the purpose of publishing that article? I mean, keep it private.
Yeah. Look, you are talking about
Yeah.
theoretical stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Theoretical
Or or
models
or,
or
or statistical or machine learning or
statistical,
things like
machine
that.
learning
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
I'm getting into this thing where I see empirical papers
Hmm.
written in such a way where once you start unpacking the methodology, you
Yeah.
clearly understand there are several steps in the middle which are not there. The information has just not been given.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. How do you justify that in an experimental paper?
So what's the point of publishing?
I don't know.
So that's very similar to, right? Like it has taken its soul of its own. I don't care what you publish. You don't care what I publish. Let's publish. Let's exist.
Let's scratch each other's back. And
Yeah,
you get your
kind of. Yeah.
promotion, I get my promotion.
Yeah. So this I've never seen more than in the field of epidemiology. COVID-19 was like gold showered on epidemiologists. Like, I mean, I'm not demeaning any epidemiologists, but you saw their citations, skyrocketing, all of them, and then you see that drop. So it's not that because it never persisted, right? You see these drops, they made the
COVID-19
career.
hopefully is a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Right.
It's a black swan of the
It's a black
highest
swan.
status.
It's a black swan, exactly.
Uh,
So so then you have these thousands and millions of models on and COVID, and exactly this is the thing, like modeling for its own sake, because it gets published. Because it's a journal. I mean, had it not been a journal, I think we did not have that behavior or that explosion of publications.
yeah.
Right.
No,
No,
but
this
see,
is, yeah,
again, all these things that we are discussing,
yeah,
all these concerns,
yeah.
it's not that they are novel, right? They have been talked about a million times.
Oh, of course, of course. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean,
Hmm.
by that token.
Yeah. No, but I think we should really try to sort this problem now. Okay.
Yeah, it's too
Because
toxic. It's
no,
becoming toxic.
no, it is doing something even worse.
Hmm.
It is essentially eroding the trust of non scientists in the scientific enterprise at
Uh,
a social level.
at a social level, yes.
And all said and done,
Yeah,
scientists are part of the society.
yeah. And
What
funded by
we
the
are
society.
doing and funded by the society, and what we are doing ultimately is for the benefit of the society.
Yeah,
Okay. I am not trying to create a better recipe for pasta for my consumption.
Yeah.
right? I'm trying to create something that will help the society at some
Maybe
level or the other.
I think we should fund that more. I don't think we have done much good work of better pastas, what our ancestor did a few decades back. I think that would
No,
really
but there
more
are people
benefit.
who are funding it in a great way, right? I mean, all pasta companies
Yeah.
and all five-star restaurants, they are
Huh.
funding research on how to make better pasta.
Okay, they might be.
No, they are. They are. I know
Okay.
that there is a huge research along these axes.
Okay,
So I
that's
have
good
a
then.
colleague. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a colleague and a close friend actually, who works in this field. So he has
Hmm.
actually, been able to create a AI model
Hmm.
which will create recipes
Hmm. Oh, new.
by yeah, by combining different elements from different kinds of cuisines. And this is not a random combination.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, anybody can do a random
Yeah,
combination, but
informed.
it is a very informed set of combinations. And apparently, this guy is pursued very heavily by both companies, food processing
Yeah.
companies, as well as five-star
V-
hotels and chefs. So there are
v-
videos of his on the internet where
Yeah.
five-star chefs are trying out his recipe and are saying that it
Yeah.
is very good.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's actually very interesting. In fact, we met today to talk about AI, and we are reaching the your
Yeah.
1 a.m. break, but we can always continue that. So that is
No,
very
it's actually
interesting.
12. Hmm.
Yeah. No,
Hmm.
we still have time, in this session, but
No, but it has
we can.
already become a very long session.
Yeah, yeah. We'll stop whenever whenever you
No, I'm fine.
hopefully.
I'm
Yeah.
fine at least for the next hour or so. After that, I
Yeah.
need to take a break.
So, sir, there's another thing, things are changing very fast. Okay. So, for
Hmm.
instance, you again, as a disclaimer, nothing to target any profession, but let's say I was a translator. Okay. And there were companies, my relatives used to pay tens of thousands of rupees just to translate, a simple manual from Japanese to English, for a particular medicine. And now those jobs are gone because an AI can do it. Okay, so overnight, nobody saw it coming. It's just done. We used to take a lot of pride in linguistic abilities, and those were the ones, AI could replicate the fastest. Uh, and one can argue that whether it's the same process way or not, but the final product is very similar. Now we are publishing, we are building our careers on science, producing and reporting science in a particular fashion. Okay, out of the constraints and necessities and the tradition. This can also change overnight, right? So, what would be that? Like, are we prepared for the next frontier of science? Like, how would uh, that?
Look, the problems with these things is
Yeah,
you cannot be ready for the change until the change arrives.
yeah,
Okay. So, and by that time, it's too late anyway.
yeah,
So, for example, 3 years back, if
yeah,
somebody had told me that we will be able to develop AI which will be able to write codes the way it is doing right now,
yeah,
I would have said, I think we are at least 20 years away from it.
yes,
And I would have been wrong
yeah,
completely. Right?
yeah,
Ditto for your translation thing.
yeah,
Ditto for many other jobs.
yes,
So, if you and I, being in academia, cannot predict this,
mm-hmm.
other people who are away from academia are less likely to predict,
Yeah,
unless they're doing just doomsday conspiracy kind of people.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
doomsday conspiracy can predict anything, right? So that's a different ballgame altogether.
It's like, twice in a day, the clock is right kind of
Hmm.
phenomena.
Exactly that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. So, given all that,
yeah,
I think we just have to be ready for it. Ready in the sense that we have to be mentally prepared that just like the translators and the coders are suddenly finding themselves to be obsolete,
yeah.
we can also become obsolete someday.
Mm-hmm.
And you either
Get a tenure
think
before
about
that.
you either think about what you will
Yeah,
do at that point of time,
yeah.
or think of an alternative career. What
So,
else can you do?
so the thing is, if you look at the way we do science, okay, and this been actually troubling me a little bit.
Hmm.
So a year is not very long. It's 365 days, which we have divided into, and we have a problem of dividing things.
Hmm.
We never let things stretch out in a span. because you walk a mile versus you count like 100, you have like a timer every 100 meters or something for a kilometer. Then mile or kilometer seems longer and much more good for health compared to when you count that 100-meter sprints 10 times. What we have done is we have divided the year into 3 semesters. We have divided semesters into weekly assignments, weeks. Okay. We have divided the same way into paper, like review process, summation process, review process. Conferences are the most toxic. A conference would be in December. You'll get invitations in January. You have to apply by March, and then, by May, approval will come, and then you will file for a travel approval, and then you will plan your tickets in like September for that one meeting for 2 days in December, right? So the whole yearly cycle, and you come back from the conference, and in 2 weeks you get a mail.
Suddenly. Yeah.
So you come back from the conference in 2 weeks, mail, oh, we are planning our next conference in this venue. Okay. So you go to the
Yeah.
conference and then you see the same 5 top scientists, the most funded, giving the same talk every second year. So there's not a lot changes in most conferences for that reason. So we have divided this, there's so much of divisions and so much of these timelines, artificial timelines. Okay. And it happens at every scale. This is happening at the level of year. It happens the same way, like a 3-year grant. It happens for a small project. It happens for like a publication, right? So where's the time to think? And where is the time to think for a longer problem where I don't need to just get something ready? It's like your guest coming to your kitchen every 5 minutes. Like, is it done? How does it taste like? Right? And as a good chef, you want like just loneliness. You want like that whole 2 days where you prepare stuff, you let it brew, you taste it yourself, with the possibility to make it again if something goes wrong, and things like that. So how do you think that affects science? So much of distraction.
Badly. Extremely badly. I mean, this is something that multiple people have spoken, right?
Hmm.
That, and many Nobel laureates have spoken about it,
Yeah.
that the kind of deep work
Yeah.
that finally led to the breakthrough that finally translated into their Nobel medals
Hmm.
would not have been possible today.
Hmm.
Because in the name of efficiency,
Yeah.
in the name of productivity,
Yeah.
okay, we have essentially ended up doing exactly as you said, making small units of time and trying to make every second count.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why all those finer and finer divisions have been done, so that
Yeah.
you are made accountable for every small unit of time.
Yeah.
And then the whole idea is you be maximally productive for as many units of time as possible.
Mhm.
But that again is a very short term thing.
Hmm.
And short term things, as we know, they are extremely good for administrative purposes. But when
Yeah.
it comes to non administrative things, deep stuff,
Yeah.
often they don't
It's
work.
not even good for your psyche because every time you do
No, it's
something, a
not.
task gets done, you get a
Hmm.
dopamine that it's done. It's a reward
Yes.
mechanism. So,
Yes. It's making
it's
us
like
junkies.
it's making us junkies, exactly.
Yes, it is. It is. It is.
Right?
It is.
So, I mean,
Why
you
do you
give,
think most scientists these days are very unhappy?
yeah,
Okay, I mean, of course, grants etc. are one thing,
yeah,
lack of grants etc. But at some level, many
huh,
scientists are also feeling, yeah, we are not doing what we are supposed to do.
hmm,
We are not thinking. We are not getting
yeah.
time to think. We are not getting time to, just sit down and cogitate. The kind of stuff, for example, which Darwin was able to do. Of course, he didn't
See,
hold an
I want
academic
to,
position.
I want to
Hmm.
do not cogitate, but I want to just work on something, build something like really like huge. But at the same time, when you look at the distractions, it doesn't let me go into several, and I've done my best work, during summer vacations, winter vacations, on weekends. Weekends, I get more work done than weekdays. Okay. But there's no time where like you have no distraction for a month and you can just think about that problem again and again, again, all the time.
Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, that's what sabbaticals are supposed to do. But from what I understand these days, even sabbaticals have become pretty stressful for many people.
I mean, I wonder if actually tenured professors are doing better stuff. One can
I
question
don't think
that.
so.
Exactly.
No, I don't think so. Because see, the moment you become tenured,
Yeah.
you are supposed to do so many other things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you are supposed to have these many students, if you have or these many postdocs, if you have these many
Administration.
guys
Yeah.
going, no, forget administration. You have to get grants for them just to keep
Yeah.
them alive. And then these guys have very different time scales of their own. A master's student doing his or her master's thesis with you will have a time scale of say 6 months to 1 year. A PhD student has a time scale of about 4 to 5 years. A postdoc has a time scale of 1 or 2 years. Each one of them,
Yeah.
they will come up with their own problems, and they will do
Mm,
their, and try to address those. And you
yeah.
can't give them your big problems, because your big problem is something that will probably,
Yeah.
you don't know where it will go.
There
So
are
you'll have
different
to,
understanding levels and different deadlines,
exactly.
and yeah.
Exactly. They have their own deadlines, they have their
Yeah.
own lives, they have their own careers. So you'll
Yeah.
have to sit with each one of them,
Yeah.
and you need to make sure that, okay, this guy's paper is getting published, that guy's experiment is not working, so you troubleshoot for that guy.
Yeah.
And then that guy's funding is not happening, so you have to make an arrangement for an alternate funding. That guy wants that particular experiment to be done, and therefore you have to lift the phone and talk to 5 different people to get that thing done, basically oil the mechanism. And that guy is feeling extremely low, so you'll have to talk to that person and mentor
Yeah.
that person, etc. So by the time you do all these things,
Mm-hmm.
you are dead, you are done.
Yes. I mean, we are not dead. I think we are the most Besharam, or what you call it, like tough skin in some ways, we
No,
still
but
thrive. But yeah,
but there are only 24 hours in a day, right?
yeah, right.
And
It takes a cost on the family and other
it takes a
aspects
cost
of
along
life.
every axis, and most importantly, it takes a cost on your attention.
Attention,
Okay,
yes. Yeah,
it does, it
yeah.
does. So
So how can one live in the same system and try to not, you know, how can one defeat this, beat this thing within the system? Are there any ways?
see, it's difficult, it's not very easy.
Hmm.
um, One has to let go of certain things. Okay. So, for example, you have to, let's say, reduce the number of students and the number of people who are working with your group.
Yeah.
So, reduce the group size basically. The moment you reduce the group size, the amount of funds that you have to bring to keep the group running goes down. So,
Yeah.
that allows you to have some extra time. But the flip side of that is that the stream of papers that your
Mhm.
department expects of you, that stream of papers will thin down. So you have to be ready to be called by the dean and the HOD saying, what the hell are you doing?
Mhm.
And you need to give them some story. So, and then of course, the moment these things happen, at some point, other recognitions that are supposed to come to you, those recognitions will dry down. Once, and the thing about recognitions is that they're all tied to each other. You get
Yeah.
recognition A, then that
Yeah.
makes you eligible for B
Between a
makes you eligible
failure
for
and
C.
between a success in science, it's a cascade rather than it's actually,
It's not a step, it's a cascade.
it's a cascade. Yeah.
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 So there are all kinds of things that you will have to give up on.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And giving up on those things is not very easy,
Yeah.
because those giving ups also have consequences.
And we are junkies.
And we are junkies.
Yeah.
So no, I'm junkie thing is just what is happening to your mind. I'm
Mhm.
talking about consequences in terms of
Yeah, of course.
social
And
stuff.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So you have to take the risk basically.
Mhm.
And sometimes the risk will work out,
Yeah.
in which case it will be great. If the risk doesn't work out, you need to have a backup plan.
The choice of spouse matters for scientists.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah, maybe scientists should start
Yeah.
marrying hedge fund managers. Yes. Okay.
See,
Yeah.
that is true. I mean, why was Darwin able to do what he was able to do? He
Yeah.
never became a professor, and he had a reasonable inheritance, and he married a
Yeah.
very rich woman.
I mean, these days, I just joke around that I'm looking for a sugar mommy because I think the amount of work which I put in NIH grants, if I, and the rejections, if I actually, like find a wealthy lady, it would be much easier. And, she can endow me with my research funds for my lab. I often joke around with my students, go out, find some, old rich people or they, or just adopt me. You know?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they used to be called patrons
Yeah.
earlier.
They still exist, but I don't think they exist in that capacity. Now it's more trust based a lot of times.
Yeah. No, also see, the point is that earlier the number of people or scientists who needed to
But
be patronized was relatively less.
yeah.
Now that number has also gone up, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
how
There'll
many
be a line
people
of
can one
scientists who are
patron?
waiting for morning, adopt me. Yes.
Exactly,
It's so
exactly.
interesting that, if on campus, generally there's an event, something about, let's say, science or sociology of science, you will not find many people.
Hmm.
All you need is like a grant agency or about grant or something, and you see everyone flocking from all the departments,
Yes.
to listen patiently.
Or you need an associate editor or some kind of an
Oh,
editorial
yeah,
person from a
associated
big
editor of
journal.
some big journal.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
that's it.
that's true.
Which tells you who are the superstars these days.
Which tells you, yeah, who are the superstars these days. Yeah. No, I personally am not looking for, kind of fame, at least not a fame within the lifetime, because I don't think uh, science is so much social and so much has the same rules of the game which other, enterprises in the world has, which we don't understand when we come to science is naive. If you think that you can just do science and good work and, uh, this is how it functions, it's not how it functions.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
No, I was just yesterday, I was reading about the history of evolutionary biology and population genetics post Darwin.
Hmm.
And for example, I was reading about Mendel,
Hmm.
and somebody is making the comment that Mendelism, why exactly did Mendelism spread when Mendel wrote about it? And somebody said that, look, people think that that's because Mendel published in a journal that nobody read.
Hmm.
But if you think about it, that journal was not that unknown either.
Yeah.
Okay. This person is making the case that when Mendel was talking about it, at that point, the social construct was not in favor of acceptance of Mendelism.
Hmm.
Whereas after 18 I forget 1865 or when Mendel publishes it, after
Hmm.
between that period to 1900, these things happen, because
Hmm.
of which the scientists' receptivity
Hmm.
towards a Mendelian explanation actually goes up. And
Yeah.
because of which in 1900, when Mendelism gets rediscovered,
Yeah.
people are in a much better position to accept it. And
Right.
even there, he makes the point that, remember, Mendelism gets rediscovered. There
Hmm.
are two people
Yeah.
who independently get the same results.
Hmm.
One of them, Correns, actually Correns decides to cite Mendel. The other guy doesn't even cite Mendel. De Vries doesn't even cite Mendel.
Yeah.
And then he is forced to cite by, I think, Correns or somebody calling him out. And then finally, it is decided that because Mendel had already done this work 35
Yeah.
years prior, and because Mendel had actually done it in so much of detail, therefore the priority should be given to Mendel.
Yeah.
And this guy is making the comment that this was perhaps done to avoid a bitter priority war
Yeah.
between these
Yeah.
two rediscoverers.
Right.
Okay, more
Yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah.
And if that had not happened, then Mendelism would probably have become Corrensism or De Vriesism or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So, what made Mendel regain his fame 35 years after his death is essentially a fight that is happening between two people
Hmm.
about whom obviously Mendel didn't have any idea.
Right. Right.
So, it's a fluke. It's a fluke of the highest
Yeah.
order.
Not just the
And it's
rediscovery but a
the
simultaneous
priority thing.
rediscovery by two competing, people.
Exactly.
And this has happened with multiple, discoveries in
Yes.
science. Yeah.
Yes. So, what becomes popular? What becomes associated with whose name?
Yeah.
Okay, who gets the fame and who does not?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
But
similarly, there was another piece that I came to know. So, there was this man called Rudolf Virchow,
hmm.
and he is the guy who came up with this statement: "Omnis cellula e cellula." All cells arise from pre-existing cells, and that
Hmm.
we have read in school this
Yeah.
particular statement.
Yeah.
And somebody doing the history of science is making the case that actually it was not Virchow, it was another guy called Remarque who actually did the job.
Okay.
And Virchow just coined the phrase, nothing else.
Hmm.
Okay. And yet today we associate that particular doctrine with Virchow and not the man who actually did the job.
But isn't it true with most history? Like most of the heroes for one country have been like, what do you call it? Like demons for the other countries. And I think
No,
it's
that's
it's
a
it's
different ball game. That's
hmm.
a different ball game. Okay. So, one person's terrorist is another person's national hero.
Yeah.
That is okay. But
Yeah.
in that case, nobody is doubting the fact that that particular person concerned did something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
It's
Right.
the
Right. Right.
interpretation which changes.
Yes.
But
In
in
this
this
case,
particular case, it's a fame
yeah.
of doing that particular bit of work shifts from
Yeah.
one person to another.
But sir, don't you think like, look, okay, so let's talk about myself. So I would consider me a science junkie. I literally don't care whether somebody sitting in some other town or some other place actually is like, oh, mother is a great scientist. If I can procure the next drug for science, in terms of currency of science, which is basically the resources for the next finding or something with a wow, where I'm kind of engaged for days, weeks, or months at a time, leading to something else. If I can continue that state, those resources and those fame would be enough. And I think
Hmm.
most of the scientists, at least in good faith, are driven by to continue that state of exploration than actually, for these recognitions.
Again, short term, long term.
Hmm.
Okay. In the long run,
Yeah.
most scientists are driven by fame. If not,
Okay. Yeah.
then why are priority wars so vicious in science?
Hmm.
Because think about it. Suppose you have figured out something, I have figured out something. Both of us have put it out as a paper.
Hmm.
Okay, you put it out 10 days before me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anybody looking at the papers can say that, my work didn't happen in 10 days.
Yeah.
So obviously, you also get the credit, I also get the credit, you
Yeah.
get the priority.
Hmm. Hmm.
Technically speaking, I shouldn't be bothered about it, right?
Maybe most scientists are not bothered about it. Very few are bothered, and we just get to hear about those. Because if something is published, like, I
I
mean,
don't know.
is it
I
worth
don't
even?
know.
Okay.
Because see, in many cases, these things also get associated with fame and money and
Yeah.
power and everything, right?
Yeah.
And when those things come in, obviously scientists do care. I mean, they are humans.
Right.
As humans, they do care.
Right.
So I think it's again, scientist is not one label.
Mm-hmm.
Scientist is a distribution. You get all
Mm-hmm.
kinds.
Right. So the other thing which I find is, I'm not sure whether when did this system started. So we have, generally speaking, in science, a pyramid model, right? Where there's a PI, there are postdocs in bigger labs, then you have multiple PhDs, you have undergraduates coming in or intern students and things like that. It's ultimately a pyramid with a PI at the top. Some labs also have a research scientist if they can afford a manager. And if you think about it, it works very different compared to, for instance, defense labs or more corporate labs or some highly specialized institutions as well, where mature scientists are working with each other, and mentorship is not that big a mandate. Now that has implications with what you do, what problems you pick on, and how you tackle them. So if I have a student, and often we criticize, this paper, the scientist is publishing this big one, such a lousy paper. But a lot of times that paper was to be published because there was a student. The student also needs to learn, and it was part of the learning process for the student. So it does not reflect the quality of or ability of the scientists themselves, but their interns, right? So we have to make those compromises at every level. And a lot
Yes.
of projects in the lab are entry-level projects for that reason, right? Where we are
Yes.
not building, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Any mentoring group will have this problem. Yes.
Right? Compared to when three mature mid-level, mid-age, or let's say mature in terms of their competence, are working on a project, they work with a different kind of intensity. They tackle very different kind of problems. So now what I feel is that when you have this pyramid model, and especially if you are busy not doing science but just getting grants and administration, then the best science you produce is determined by the best quality student you might have. Okay.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, when you are yourself a bench scientist or you are yourself involved in the whole process, then you can capitalize on that years of ability and insight more thoroughly compared to being in a pyramid group. So do you think there's a value in not prioritizing a pyramid group, but actually prioritizing a very strong collaborative, because of internet, we can collaborate with experts all over the world, but work in a more distributed and diffused fashion with mid-career experts compared to, just building a bigger pyramid?
See, both have their values.
Hmm.
And if you look at, for example, in the Indian context, if you look at CSIR labs,
Yeah.
where training is not a primary mandate, they do have their PhD programs, but that is
Hmm.
not their primary mandate.
Yeah.
There, it's not as big a pyramid or as sharp a pyramid as,
Yeah.
for example, in universities. And there, people are working more focusedly towards a problem.
Hmm.
So I think this entire thing comes from this early, you know, uh, putting together of
Hmm.
research and mentorship
Hmm.
in the university system. So what you are talking about is a problem of the university system primarily.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's not a problem of many research institutes.
Right. Right.
So I think that there is a value to both.
Hmm.
Okay. And the reason the pyramid thing works sometimes very well is because the pyramid ensures that you have different age groups in the mix. Okay.
Hmm.
And the pyramid also ensures that the base of the pyramid is constantly reshuffled.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is fresh
Here. Yeah.
intelligence, fresh blood, fresh muscles getting
Hmm.
injected into the system all the time. In that other system that you talked about,
Hmm.
the chances of ossification are much higher.
Yeah. Ossification and staleness. Yeah.
And staleness,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think both systems have their pros and cons,
Hmm.
and both systems need to be there for different class of problems. So for example, in a defense lab, as you pointed
Hmm.
out, the pyramid system will absolutely not work.
Not work. Yeah.
Even in an industrial research lab,
Yeah.
which needs to get a job done in a very short amount of time, specified amount of time,
Right.
again, that will not work.
Hmm.
But for tackling more diffused problems, which will happen over a longer period of time,
Yeah.
I think this kind of a pyramid system has some value.
Right.
So again, which is why I would suggest that in the society we need both. You can't just do with one.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Hmm.
But it is up for disruption, right? I mean, lack of funding means less number of PhD students in general.
See,
Uh,
anything is up for disruption if you have lack of funding.
yeah,
Okay.
right.
So even that kind of a flat structure that you are talking about,
Yeah.
it will have a disruption.
Okay, so with the argument that we have abundance of oversupply of PhDs, right? I mean, there have been articles in Nature Science and popular debates, and there are
Hmm.
two ways to look at it. We can say that we have we have abundance of PhDs which we do not need. Or we can say that we have not been thinking correctly. We produce too much of workforce, but we did not create as many positions or an environment basically to sustain them. Okay. So one way is to cut the bottom, the other way is to broaden the top. Okay. Of course, it's easier to chop the bottom because it doesn't take money. It's difficult to broaden the top because it takes money, right? But do you think we have too many of PhDs, or do you think society would be better off by actually producing more PhDs, and in fact
No, I do
expanding?
think we have an excess.
We have an
I do
access.
think we have an excess, yes.
Access
Because,
compared to how many positions exist, or access in general, independent of what positions can exist.
no, see, excess has to be defined in terms of the requirement or the absorption capacity in the society.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
If we need 1,000 PhDs
Hmm.
and if we only have 500, then
Hmm.
that's a very bad situation to be in.
Hmm.
Okay. So, for example, when India became independent,
Yeah.
India found itself in a peculiar scenario where it didn't have sufficient engineers.
Right.
Okay. And IITs,
Mm.
etc., came up
Exactly.
because
Yes.
of that particular requirement.
Yes.
Now, right now, we have so many PhDs, but again, there's a difference between PhDs and engineers, and this is
Hmm.
something that needs to be taken care of. Why are you producing your PhD?
Yeah.
if you are producing your PhDs to become the academics of tomorrow,
Yeah.
then you need to have sufficient academic positions to absorb them.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a problem.
Which is constant throughout the world. That problem exists throughout the world.
But if you are using, or if you want your PhDs to become the workforce for industrial research or more application oriented research, that is perfectly fine. But then you train your PhD in that way. Okay, you cannot take a PhD in evolutionary biology and tell that person to start improving batteries. It doesn't work that way.
So in a sense, we have done disservice overall as a system, right? Because you come out of PhD and you realize that there are 100 applicants for a faculty position.
To some extent, yes.
Yeah.
See, the point is that, again, as I said, what else can a PhD do?
Right.
Okay. We also need to see what are the other kinds of positions that where a PhD can be fruitfully engaged. This is the important thing. See, right now, what is happening? Right now, in the government sector, there is an advertisement for the job of a, peon or the job of a bus conductor, and people with bachelor's and master's degrees apply.
Right.
Okay. Now, the government of India can say that, okay, we will make bachelor's must to get a peon's job, or bachelor's or master's must to get a conductor's job. But that is stupid, right?
It's a waste of resources.
It's a complete wastage of resources. You don't need any of those skills to do that kind of.
It's a waste of human capital.
Same thing needs to happen for PhDs. Everybody is saying, okay, let's have a PhD for this job and that job.
Right.
Okay. Let us first ask ourselves the question, do we need a PhD for that job? Or is it that a person with a master's will do reasonably well? So, for example, there is this thing that science communication should have more PhDs. Okay. Do we really? Has anybody ever asked the question whether people with PhDs actually make for better science communicators?
Or by the personality, probably not.
Yes. Okay. Similarly, there is this thing that science administrators should have PhDs. Okay. Again, let us ask the question, is it really the case?
Yes.
Okay. Is it the case that, a good understanding of how to work in a lab is needed? Or do you need to be more human-centered or human-focused? Okay.
Right.
How to manage a person is more needed. Okay. Actually, I do see some, argument in asking for PhDs for this administrator part. Okay. I do think that understanding the mindset of a scientist is going to be useful for an administrator
in science,
for administrating those guys. But for many other jobs, I really don't understand. Okay.
But in that case, so the current science system works on across the world. It works on PhDs, right? Cheap PhDs, because those are the major workforce, right? Okay. And cost of living has increased a lot in certain areas of the world. Okay, one can justify PhD salaries in some areas, but definitely not in other areas. And the fact that it often takes like 5, 7, 8 years to do a PhD with uncertainty.
In the US, though, in Europe, it's much cheaper, 3 to 4 years.
Right. But in the US, I mean, depending on the institute, it can last really long. And some of these universities are in a priciest of the places. Okay, so it's unaffordable for professors. I mean, forget a PhD. So then the question is that, and we understand this reality, which means that we need to produce less PhDs by that token, right?
I think we need to understand how many we need. And then tune the numbers to that level.
But definitely we need less. Okay, that's for sure.
Probably need to cut down a bit.
Cut down, right? But that also means that we cut down the research output.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
And that's
Those
where the
things
vested
are all
interests are.
interconnected.
Right?
That's why the incentives have all become misaligned.
Yeah, because professors, I want 5 cheap PhDs. What better than that?
Exactly. So that's why one has to ask the question, okay, once this guy gets the degree, what the hell this person is going to do? Okay. And I don't think anybody is asking this. So I think what one needs to do is to, make sure that all the incentives get aligned. Right now, there is a lot of social level misalignment of the incentives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There is a massive incentive in producing lots of work, even if
Yeah.
that work means nothing.
Yeah.
That needs to be taken out.
Yeah.
There is an incentive to get as much grants as you can.
Yeah.
That needs to be taken out.
To an extent that it has become a culture now in certain labs that you collect data only for the pilot data you need for the grant. And then you don't do any study of the grant because nobody checks actually. It's the compliance is pretty weak afterwards, whether you what you did. Then you wait for that couple of years, and then you publish the same old pilot data in some form. It's easy to publish. Anything gets published. You write a paper, it will get published. We have enough number of journals and people asking for money to make a PDF. And then you get a new grant. So you collect data to get a new grant rather than actually using the grant to do the work. It's just, it's a cart before the horse. Uh, yeah,
I mean, I am not surprised given how insane it
yeah,
has become to get grants in the US. I'm not
yeah,
surprised that people are doing such things.
mm,
I mean, it's very easy to get on a high moral horse and say, oh, very low quality people. These are the guys who cannot become scientists. These are bad people, etc. But
yeah,
all this is bullshit.
yeah,
They are doing it because you are forcing them to do it.
yeah.
So instead of lecturing them, change the incentive structure. Make it such
Right,
that they don't have to do it. They're not doing it because they intrinsically are, finding it very lucrative to do that.
right.
Do it so that they can survive in a
In
different way.
fact, instead of asking to have people from at least three different expertise or whatever, ask at least one junior faculty with you. That will yield much better research than, you know, or
See, the problem is that then after some time, what will that junior faculty do? Will that junior faculty have to stick with you for their entire life?
of course not.
Then where will that junior faculty go?
No, I mean
And
the
how
junior
will, I
faculty
mean,
will become
what's the
senior, right?
difference between that junior faculty and that postdoc?
I mean, yeah, it's just an affiliation difference. Yeah, in that actually by that token, you're giving them more power than actually democratizing in some ways. You're changing the ground at which the competition happens.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, this needs massive thinking for long-term sustainability of science. I think the incentive structure of
I
science
think it's
needs,
high time that the thinking is done.
yeah,
And of course, each society has to do it on its own. Okay.
yes,
Each,
yes,
each society's structure is different. So just importing the American model or the European model or the German model or the Chinese model will not work.
yeah,
Each society needs to sit down and think for itself what it needs to do. The Chinese are doing it. I know that they're doing a very nice job. They actually think about these things a lot. So, for example, I mean, I don't know, I haven't checked this out, but somebody was telling me that apparently in China there is this rule that if you have to become an academic in China,
yeah.
you need to do your postdoc PhD in China.
I think now they are doing this because
Hmm.
there's a demographic shift in happening in PhD student population in the US. Actually, it's becoming. I've talked to several faculty members from like top universities who used to have like a really flourishing lab with a lot of students. There's a common complaint now that it's very hard to find a PhD student. I mean, I see LinkedIn posts from really good labs with decent salaries, posting, then extending the deadlines to get a postdoc, to get a PhD. It's almost becoming impossible,
Yeah,
unless you are in like a really nice city to actually, attract a PhD student or a postdoc.
true.
Yeah,
No, but the point I'm trying to make is that
yeah,
whatever I said about the Chinese thing
yeah,
policy, that will probably work in the context of China.
yeah. It won't work
We
anywhere. So,
it won't work everywhere, and people
yeah,
should not just import it because it is working in some context.
right.
We should figure out what will work in India,
Yeah.
and we should try to do it in
So
India.
the other thing, so public trust in science, and I don't know how they measure it, what do they do, but seemingly there's a news that public trust in science is very all-time low. Despite the fact that, by the way, the public is using products of scientific investigations at the all-time high, okay, which is very,
Yeah.
funny. But I understand why the public sentiment is low. I personally think that that's also because scientists have been more partisan than they should have been. Do you think scientists have a role to play in politics? I think that if they stay away from politics and especially partisan boundaries, it might be better off for everyone as a society. Because taxpayers are taxpayers and taxpayers are blind. You are getting taxpayer money from like everyone's belief.
See,
Yeah.
scientists are also part of the society.
Yeah.
They are voting.
Yes.
Okay.
Or maybe they should not be allowed to
Therefore,
vote. Okay. I mean that's just an idea. I mean, it won't
no,
affect it. No, it won't affect things a lot because they're anyway a minority. You know, it will open a
no,
new way of thinking to
see,
allow
if you
not. Yeah.
prevent them from voting, then
Yeah.
basically you are saying that they are not citizens.
Okay.
That's a very hard stance to take.
Okay. So they
Very
can
hard.
vote, but they can vote, but in the science practice of science and science communication, they should not be partisan. They should just stick to science.
See, the problem is in science communication. If
Yeah.
scientists don't take part in that,
Yeah.
then who will do it?
No,
I
but
mean,
it should be
most
based on science. It should not be based on a specific party or a specific way of thinking. It should be just talking
it
science.
should not be parroting some political line, is what you are
Exactly.
trying to say.
And I have a feeling that science has become too politicized lately. Maybe it was always the case. Some people argue that it was always the case. But
Yeah. See, again, as I
yeah,
said, everything boils down to, the fact that as long as the money is coming from some people,
yeah,
there will be incentives in pleasing those people.
hmm,
Okay, whatever those people are. I
yeah,
mean, suppose you are getting your money from, say, some big corporate,
yeah,
and the corporate tells you, Ki, Bhaiya, we are launching our product. You have been associated with us for so long, and we have been
yeah,
funding you for so many years. Would you mind coming to our,
hmm,
launch party?
yeah,
It will be very difficult for you to say no.
hmm,
Very, very, very difficult. Just
right,
pragmatically,
yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
Are you politicizing yourself, or are you selling yourself by going to that?
Yeah, but at the same
Yes,
time, your presence itself means that you have endorsed.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. No, as I said, the answer to the question, are you selling yourself, is yes, you are selling
yeah,
yourself
yeah,
if you
yeah,
are
yeah.
going there. Okay.
Right.
But the point is, if you don't sell yourself, tomorrow your funding gets stopped,
Yeah.
or at least gets
And
affected.
then you can make an argument, world would be a really
Greater
lovely
good,
place to
better
live
good.
with my research. And just by selling a little bit of my soul, I'm doing like this service to the whole world in the long run.
And then it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. Right. So basically it's like such a messy place. All we can do is like to make sure that, the saliva and blood is not all over the place. It's not a lot of mess. Let's clean it as much we can, but still it will remain a messy place. Kind of a
That
thing.
is true of living. That is true of
Yeah.
any kind of living.
Hmm.
Exactly the discussion that we are having
Yeah.
can be had between two people who are, let's say, in corporate
Yeah.
or different kinds of corporates.
Hmm.
It can be talked about, between people who are, let's say, in NGOs.
Yeah.
I mean, the details will change,
Yeah.
but the overall problems that we are talking about will remain exactly the same.
Hmm.
Okay, make sure that the guy who is funding is not displeased too much.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's also a bit discouraging, right?
I mean, to be honest, like I think so. So, for instance, I know I work a lot. Okay, keep myself busy with research and things. But I'm lately realizing a lot of that work is also just to keep myself busy in the sense to keep myself busy in a scientific fact, in a science way. I mean, how should I say it? I just wonder that let's say if I would have given not allowed to publish for 3 years, okay, and nobody cares. I was just given 3 years and I just have to come up with something. My brain would have worked very differently, and I don't even know how it would have worked.
Yes, true.
I don't even know how it would have worked. Like
Absolutely.
because I'm not in that constraint right now. But
Absolutely.
that would have produced something very different compared to what I'm producing right now, right? And how
Most
much
likely.
right? Yeah,
Most likely. I mean, incentive structure is changed. Everything changes.
everything changes. Right. So do you think, okay, so we all know about Manhattan Project, right? And you are the one who recommended me all the books of Feynman when I joined ISO, right? So the Manhattan Project was a project to make atomic bomb, right? And we had similar projects for different things since then. And industry a lot of times, works that way. Some industry leaders also work that way. Do you think that model works for basic science or to solve problems now? Like let's say Parkinson's, right? We spend so much in Parkinson's disease, right? Individual labs. Do you think some of the problems are beyond individual labs now, and we need to stop funding individual labs and just have large billion-dollar, mega billion-dollar mandates or projects and pump money in, bring like experts or a panel or like build a facility on everyone who wants to work on Parkinson's comes there for contract basis, amazing facilities and just works and just produces and leaves, would be a better idea to solve bigger problems. Because when you do these small, small studies, you often lose track of the bigger problem as well in science. Your own long-term problems, you lose track of those.
See, there was a fantastic statement about the Manhattan Project,
Yeah.
which was that I forget who said this, but somebody who worked there, he said
Mm.
that we thought that the problem will be 10% technical and 90% basic science,
Huh.
theoretical. But in reality, the problem turned out to be 10% theoretical and 90% technical / engineering. Okay, I'm
Mm.
paraphrasing the thing, but this was the
Yeah.
gist.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole stuff worked out in the context of the Manhattan Project precisely because it was primarily a technical / engineering problem that needed to be resolved.
Mm.
Okay. When it comes to resolving theoretical issues, which have too many things, too many variables operating with each other,
Which mostly
then
biology is. Yeah.
which mostly biology is, okay,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, since your example was from Parkinson's, that's why
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
If your example was, let's say, to build a quantum computer,
Yeah.
I think what you are saying will work very nicely over there.
Yeah, I think it's working. And that's why quantum computation labs are so highly centralized in some ways and they take a lot of money and yeah.
And they have lots of people
Yeah.
working focused on one thing. Let's build
Yeah.
a quantum computer, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in bio, I think this kind of an approach works once a certain threshold has been crossed,
Mm.
once certain things are in place, and then what needs a concentrated effort to get all the missing pieces and put them together and
Yeah.
build the final product. It works in those contexts. Now, of course, I don't work in the field of Parkinson's disease, so I don't know what the state of the knowledge is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe if the state of the knowledge is such that the basics are done, it's the final push that is
Yeah.
needed, the Schwerpunkt, then it might work. For other kinds of problems, I think the basic stuff which needs to be done by giving individual labs small amount of money to get those individual nuggets of information,
Right.
I think in those cases we need those stuffs.
Okay.
So basically for this one has to have a very good judgment of where the state of the field is and
Mm-hmm.
what is the precise problem to be resolved.
And then the question is that who gets to decide that, right? I mean, there's a lot of then you go into the power play. Who gets to decide
Yeah,
and at what cost, at what incentive, and who are the people they choose? I mean, yeah, of course, Feynman and others we know about Oppenheimer were there in that lab, and they are celebrities now, posthumously. But who knows? There would have been 10 times better people who were not brought in there,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Einstein himself never was a part of the Manhattan Project, right?
yeah,
It's his thing, right? Equal to mc square is his, right?
yeah.
Einstein wrote that letter that leads to the Manhattan Project,
Mm-hmm.
but that's it.
Mm-hmm.
After that, he didn't do anything else. So that's one big name Isn't it?
On the token, like, do you think in the current generation of scientists, first of all, there are too many scientists. Like, I'm not saying like they should not be, but there are too many scientists, okay, compared to before, right? Like, too many. I think I was like
Right.
surprised when there was some stats on like how many million scientists are there in the world, and I was like, really, these many million? I was considering myself a little special. So these many scientists. So, do you think we will have scientists with that kind of posthumous fame in the next century, from the century?
We will see what will happen is
Yeah,
that, I mean, think about how a subject progresses.
yeah,
People do lots of work, and then somebody writes a review.
uh,
In that review, that person creates some kind of a framework.
yeah,
Certain kinds of things, certain papers don't get
yeah,
mentioned at all.
yeah.
Certain papers get very prominently mentioned. And then those are the star papers, right?
Uh, uh.
Exactly
In
the
fact,
same
some
thing will
journals add a
happen.
star to that in the references.
They
Yeah,
do, they do, yes.
yeah.
Same thing will happen here. Some history will get written,
Hmm.
and the history will lionize certain people, will villainize certain other people, and will completely ignore a very large number of people.
Hmm.
And where you are in that historical book is by and large going to,
Be a
because
historian's friend. Be a historian's friend.
absolutely be a historian's friend.
Choose your
That's
friend. Choose your friend wisely.
carefully.
I mean, if
Yes,
you are in research, so choose your spouse wisely and choose your friends wisely. Yeah.
yes, yes, absolutely, yes. And choose a young historian, by the way, not an old one,
Yeah, you want
because
them to live long, you know.
long enough to write about you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense, you know. That makes complete sense to the young historian. Okay. I mean, and you see that happening actually. So for instance, trends, the whole trend series. I've tried myself several times with several proposals and trends, mostly rejected at the second stage or something. Trends has a very strong bias towards certain, individuals keep coming in with the repetitions of the same stuff, over years. But it's like trends, by the very token of the journal name, it actually sets trends. And that is true. They are very powerful journals. And they have actually done really good work as well in certain fields. But if you are in good dictionary of trends, you do set the history and the
Yes, you
course
do.
of science. But getting into that is not about science.
It's about the sociology.
It's about the sociology. So once you are into that sociology, then you can actually set the trend. Uh, so it happens in the real world. I mean, in front of us at a more diffuse level.
It happens everywhere, yeah. It
Yeah.
happens everywhere. I mean, just yesterday, I was also reading a book on the history and economics and sociology of cricket in India.
Hmm.
And somebody was making the point that for a very long time, there were some 4 or 5 states and cities which were dominating in terms of their representation in the Indian cricket team.
Calcutta, Bombay,
Bombay in a very big way,
very big way. Yeah.
oh, Karnataka to a big way, and
Maybe they
some
had
other.
longer roads in which empty roads at that time.
Bombay में empty roads, come on. No, Bombay had the parks and it
It
had
has
a
the
cricketing
parks. It
culture.
still actually has parks and gyms on parks. People come in
Yes,
the
yes,
morning, to do exercise in parks in Bombay, no other city. Yeah,
yes. So, and then they said that one of the things that has happened
yeah.
is that now you are getting people from cities which are not traditionally powerhouses
Yes,
of cricket.
Nagpur.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then large number of names are given.
yeah,
But then these guys say that look at this, we talk about these things as small cities only in the context of Bombay.
yeah.
But otherwise, if you look at these places, by the definitions of most other countries, these are not small cities at all.
Right.
Okay. So, for example, the poster child of this is Mahendra Singh Dhoni coming from Ranchi.
Yeah.
And this guy is making the
Raj is
point
the.
that exactly, Ranchi is not too small.
It's also, it's like, people complain that, for instance, 50 or whatever, a large proportion of faculties in the US are from these 8 or 10 institutions, which is
Hmm.
correct. But when you look at the other 50, okay, when you look
Then,
at that proportion, that's also like are coming from so the next institutes who are complaining also make the biggest proportion of the next leftover,
no, it's
percentage.
a fractal basically.
It's a
It's
fractal.
a,
Yeah. It's
it's
a
a
scale
completely fractal
independent
structure.
phenomena.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
I mean, in that case, Chinese philosophy was very advanced. I remember sort of a story where somebody's had a son, and son had a fall. So no, it was a horse basically. I think the horse went and it was lost, and people said they came and said like, "Oh, you lost a horse. It's a bad news." It's like, no, maybe let's wait and watch. So a few days later, the horse came back and also brought like a horse lady
Mayor.
with the
Hmm.
horse, right? A mare. No,
Hmm.
is a female horse a mare?
Yeah.
Okay, mare. Okay.
Hmm.
So like, yeah, it's a good news. They said like he says like, yeah, I don't know whether it's a good news or not because his son was riding the mare and had a fall, so broke the bone. So then people say, you are right. It was not a good news. It was actually bad news. Had there been no mayor, the sun would have been intact. He says like, who knows? Then there was like a draft. All the people in the village were drafted. The only person left was his son because there was a
He
broken
had
bone. It's like,
inherited
oh,
it.
that's a good news. You have your son left. So it's like, yeah, who knows? So so it's part of the Chinese, or maybe like a lot of Eastern religions as well, right? The time scale matters, and good and bad is a perspective of the time scale rather than actually absolute.
Yeah. And also think about the long time scale.
Yeah.
So there is this story, somebody, I think Sun Yat-sen was asked, what do you think about the effects of the French Revolution on world?
Hmm.
Okay, so this is about 200 years after French Revolution,
Yeah.
and this guy says it's too soon to say.
Susan say. Yeah, it's like, if you don't like a person, the best thing you can do is to live longer than that person.
Well,
You know what I mean? I mean, your enemy, if you
hmm.
just outlive your enemy, you will see your enemy die by the very token. Some
See, once you
misfortune
have
happen,
seen
yeah.
sufficient deaths,
Yeah.
death ceases to have any special quality, right? And
Hmm.
that is your own, loved ones' deaths as well as your enemy's death. You know that as old people, everybody has to die. So that guy dying before you, the enemy dying before you, actually
Yeah.
makes no particular significance to you beyond a point.
That is a different topic which deserves its own discussion. It's
Conversation.
conversation. It's very, we don't discuss death as deeply as I think we should. It's a there's a lot to think
Common
about
people
it.
don't, but philosophers have discussed death to
Yeah,
death.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's a lot to contemplate over it. I mean, there's no
Of
shortage
course,
of how you can think about it,
of course,
right?
of course.
And if you actually think about anesthesia or the process how you faint or sleep, and when and thinking about death in those contexts and in the context of pain completely changes the perspective of death. Uh, I think most of our fear of death is more related to the pain rather than actually the event itself.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
as you said,
yeah,
that's a
different topic. Yeah,
topic deserves its own discussion.
yes, right. So, sir, I think you have to leave now, right?
Yeah, I need to
Almost. Okay.
push off. Yeah.
So we started for AI, and I think we have touched upon certain things which actually pretty well go into the whole AI space. Uh, and I think
That's true, huh?
we should cover this in a different session.
Yeah, yeah, of
Continue.
course. I mean, I fully agree. We never reached where we wanted to go,
Yeah.
but that's fair enough.
But sir, these
That's the
things
mark
are
of an interesting conversation.
these things are related. So, for
Yeah,
instance,
yeah.
AI at the same time will reduce the workforce we need for research, and at the same time, it is producing AI agents, which lets you do more research. So, uh, where is it
The
heading?
nature
Is
of research has to change. The nature of teaching has to change. The
yeah,
nature of training has to change. So many things have to change. Yeah,
yes, and incentives.
and incentives.
Yeah. Sir, before we stop, what do you think of the future of review articles in the era of AI? So, I'll give you an example. There are certain fields, for instance, stroke rehabilitation. There are more review articles than there are actual articles.
Hmm.
Virtual reality, there are more review articles than actually empirical articles, in certain aspects. That's because you don't need any resources for review articles. Until now, you can just, do a literature review. Most of them are substandard. Now, those kind of things are very easy fruit in terms of scientific labor because of these tough tools, which we'll discuss in the next session. Do you think that uh, we are going to go past the era of review articles? Because as a scientist now, you don't even need to read the review articles. Sometimes you need to, but when engines become so good that they can synthesize current information from actually empirical articles, then your AI engine will produce better information than actually a review article by one particular person based on selective evidence.
No, there are two or three things over here.
Yeah.
Number one is that review articles are of two types. One type is where it is simply cataloging all the information.
Yeah.
And putting information of the same type next to each other,
right,
etc. Okay. The review articles can and also should be of another type where it is synthesizing the insights.
Yes.
Where it is saying that, look, there are 10 people who are saying X, there are 2 people who are saying Y. If we think like this and this, then the Y camp goes away. One should therefore take X as the stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of review articles which are typically more helpful.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And I don't think there is any AI which is capable of writing this second kind of review article as of now.
Right.
When it comes to the first kind of review article, yeah, sure, AI will be good at it, but as of now, AI has not yet reached there.
Yeah.
So, for example, okay, maybe these are early days of AI, but at least as of this moment, when an AI is writing a nice review article, it is giving all the references. Earlier, though, even the references it was making up, but with the latest AIs, that is not happening. Hallucination has gone down.
Yes.
But there is a different kind of hallucination which is very rampant, which is the article will exist.
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that the article is actually saying what it is put up as a reference for.
Right.
Okay, so basically misalignment between the statement and the article.
Right.
And until and unless that gets properly rectified, it is not even good for the first kind of review.
Yes.
Okay. So I think, if at all anything happens, the first kind of review will be in danger when AI becomes sufficiently good to take care of the problem that I just mentioned.
As well as for the first kind of review written 5 years back, actually doesn't serve a lot of purpose right now for most things, but we still keep on citing. If you think of how many obsolete citations people cite, is a lot. But when you actually have that search engine, which is actually doing real-time synthesis for you at an acceptable level, then I don't need to read those kind of review articles, the first kind of review articles, which might be written a few years back, might not be even contemporary.
If you think about it, the first kind of review article, which was just putting together a lot of information, most of the time I was never citing the review articles. I was just using that review article as a search engine.
Right.
Looking at the primary article and
I agree with you.
Article,
I always like the idea of citing primary articles. I do not like the idea of citing reviews.
No. Yes. I'm very clean about that. I cite only primary articles.
Right.
Okay. Only when the review article is making a certain point by synthesizing certain pieces of information, then I cite the review article.
But most of the time, it was a bibliography which we were using.
Exactly. So now we have a different bibliography. Who cares?
Okay, we'll discuss this in detail. I don't know how long are you here right now, because now when writing is so cheap, I mean, of course we need an effort, we need a human touch, but it is getting better and better. So, for instance, right now AI is at a level when you do any statistics, even a pretty decently complex statistics in R, you just put your output in a good AI model and ask it to summarize and findings and categorize them and things like that. It does a decent job, which you can work upon to add the nuances and to
incidentally, R itself had come up with a package to do this. Are you aware of this? I forget the name of the package. It was Report R or something like that. Okay, I forget the name. But the whole idea was that you do a test, and then essentially you get the report, you pass the results of that through this, and it will actually generate the text with the proper interpretation and everything in a way in which you could copy paste it in a result section.
Right. Unless they're like very long interactions, like 5 or 6 factors, which needs very complex interpretations.
That's a different ball.
Almost routine stuff. Yeah, it should be easy for R as well.
See, so forget R, SPSS.
It used to do that. Yes.
It used to give a verbose.
Yes. Okay. I remember.
So R basically, I think they must have taken it from SPSS. Okay.
Yes.
So as far as routine interpretation is concerned,
Yeah.
I think you can have routine interpretation even minus AI, and those
Mm-hmm.
interpretations will be pretty decent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Since I have not used AI for this particular purpose that you are talking about,
Yeah.
I don't know how much better the AI interpretations are compared to those routine interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they are substantially better, particularly with slightly complicated interactions, then sure, one has to
Mm-hmm.
take it seriously. If they are at roughly the same level, then who goes for AI? I would rather
Right.
prefer the very deterministic, R thing.
Yeah. Right. Right. I agree with you. But I think
Hmm.
we'll reach at a stage where we will have the ability to directly take, because when we write articles, we actually subjectively biasing the interpretations based on what we understand, what
Hmm.
literature we know, and what we want to show. Okay. But I think we'll reach an ability where if we have AI readable, I think journals have to change over time, reporting systems have to change, and there have to be some standard tabulations where you actually input the values which are machine readable, so that now an AI model can take the same output and actually interpret. And now, so the interpretation is basically accessible with a click to the user, then actually assuming that everything that a researcher is saying is actually correct.
Which interpretation are you talking about? The data interpretation?
The data interpretation, yeah. And
But
providing it in the context, yeah.
I mean, think about it. When you submit your R scripts
Yeah.
as supplementary online material and you
Yes.
submit your data, that's exactly what is supposed to happen, right? You put the R script and the entire analysis comes out.
Yeah. And when they are visible, yes. And when you know that they are in the supplementary and you can see.
Nowadays, most people, okay, I mean, we have been for the last few of our papers, we have been
Yeah.
always giving it.
Yeah.
In fact, what we do is we don't simply give the script, we give the entire R markdown file.
Okay. So
So
what
the
I'm giving is
script
like
and
R file, the data file, and the output.
what you try to give is the R notebook, which
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
together.
Exactly.
You're giving
Exactly.
the R
Exactly.
notebook, right?
Yeah. R notebook
So
and the data file. Yes. Yeah.
if you're giving the R notebook and the data file, then that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, people
Okay.
can run it straight away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what extra is the AI going to do over here? Apart
Mm-hmm.
from the verbose output,
Yeah.
what extra?
Okay. Writing papers are becoming very easy, and I don't know. I think that will lead us to put more weight on actually the data or the kind of data we have or the kind of experiments. No?
I I am. I mean, my experience of writing paper, barring the
Yeah.
Grammarly kind of simple grammar
Yeah.
touch-ups, my experience has not been very decent. But then again, I have not probably used it as extensively as you have.
Yeah.
So I should probably
No, of
give
course
it
it is
a bit
not.
of
It
time.
is nowhere close to a human, but it does a really good job at. I think one of the things, okay, to be honest, although people make fun on LinkedIn about reviewing, I think some of the AI models do a really good job at reviewing.
Okay, have you tried it?
Yeah, so what I do it with my own manuscripts. So
Hmm.
I put my own manuscript, I feed my own manuscript and I keep doing it again and again to get the feedback. And I've seen massive improvements, as well as AI telling me things which no colleague would have told. Things are
Mhm.
missing. Okay. Uh, like Owen model does really well with that. In fact, better than Claude in terms of, things. It does the best job at at finding typos. So because it cannot miss a typo, humans will miss. So as a
Hmm.
proofreader, I don't think there's anything better than
That is true.
that
That
than
is
that.
true. Hmm.
It does a really good job at formatting things as well.
Hmm. Those
Yeah,
are fine. Those I
yeah,
agree. AI
yeah.
will be good at it.
And some of those
So
things used to take a lot of effort before. Yeah.
that is true. That is true.
And my recent discovery is that it is doing integration really well. I mean, so a lot of physicist colleagues used to basically elaborate on an equation with their whole ability to do, calculus. AI models are doing amazing calculus.
Hmm. Okay, that's very
So
interesting.
you give it a complex equation, it does derive the whole thing. Of course, you need to be able to understand it, like where the derivation goes wrong, but what Claude does really well. I mean, even O1 is doing really, really good with calculus derivations.
Mhm.
Okay.
Wow. I mean, I haven't tried those aspects. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, that's
I
not
want to
my
talk to
line
some
of
of the
work.
maths colleagues, how they are using it.
Yeah. No, I think many of my maths colleagues really want to use AI. I've heard from them that they would like to. I don't know what they have done about it,
Yeah,
but they've been saying that they're very excited.
yeah. Because then you can actually focus on, those bottlenecks which AI cannot. I mean, uh, it helps you discover the limits of knowledge, in ways
Yeah.
where intuition or where technical flow basically stops, and you have to have a leap of thought rather than a procedural advancement.
No, I know what you are saying.
Yeah,
See, if you think about maths, okay, maths has two kinds of things. One is that intuitive
yeah,
jump.
yeah,
And once you have made the intuitive jump, you know that this is the correct thing.
mhm,
Then what is left is the
yeah,
proper, hammer and chisel work of getting to that place,
yes,
which lots of mathematicians will tell you is pure drudgery,
yeah,
but it needs to be done,
and
and it
that's
is
what they
done.
give to their PhD students, right?
I guess so. I guess so. So anyway,
Yeah,
so yeah, what
yeah,
you're saying is AI will help in that.
yeah. I think, sir, yeah, we can close today's session. It was
Hmm.
really wonderful, getting off some steam as well as like talking about some potential solutions. Sir, personally think that we are up for a massive shift it might out of societal pressure, and it might be out of technological, uh, you know, uh,
Advancements.
advancements, unstoppable technological advancements, unregulated technological advancement, that things have to change. And the structure of academia has to change if it has to survive. There's no option, basically. That's what I feel.
No, some changes are needed.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
undergraduates all over the place are using AI for their assignments. How are you going
I
to
have a
stop them?
cousin she's in like class seventh.
Right.
So
And you can understand what ICER undergrads are doing.
yeah, of course. I mean, I mean, think about recommendation letters, a statement of research. I mean, LinkedIn people can do all kind of virtue signaling that, oh, please write it yourself. But I mean, at some point in time, your model will learn from how you write. And
True, but I have a problem over there. See, right now,
yeah,
for example, I'm getting lots of emails from people saying,
yeah,
I want to join you for
yeah,
summer, blah, blah.
yeah.
Those letters have basically become
Same.
indistinguishable from each other.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I agree with you. I agree with
Okay.
you. Yeah,
I mean, to the extent that nowadays, if I see an original letter,
yeah,
maybe with lots of grammatical mistakes,
yeah.
but the fact that the letter is original is scoring points with me.
I agree with you. But at the same time, I think, and I remember my time when I was applying for PhD and how much effort I put in that one page of statement of purpose. Of course, it worked it out. But like there are agencies to help you. You go online to, think about a statement of purpose and things like that. I think we
No,
can
but
do.
most of those things, statement of purposes are extremely stupid. I'm talking about pre-AI statement of purposes.
Yeah.
The ones that the online, things tell you, they start with when I was a kid. Everything starts
Yeah.
with when you are a kid.
I I
Okay.
agree with you.
My mother fell ill. My sister became this. Okay.
I
Oh,
agree
come
with
on,
you.
yeah.
I agree with you.
Come on.
I mean, I had a half a page, statement of purpose, or like half a page CV and one page statement of purpose, and I got through like several places because it was like original. But at the same time, if you think about like getting a PhD student or getting any candidate now, do we really want to judge a candidate based on a piece of writing when that piece of writing is not even predictive of like future abilities given
No, but
now?
who is judging a candidate based on a piece of writing? Nobody is, right? You always have to, have an interaction like this. Longer
Uh,
the better. Multiple
ye-
times.
yes. But we used to, if it was bad writing, it was a rejection, generally speaking, right? At least the reverse was not true.
At that point of time, the whole idea is that if you don't even have the ability to put some effort in
Yeah.
communicating, you are not worth spending time on. Right now that thing is gone. So basically statement of purpose should be, nobody
Okay,
should take it.
we'll discuss this. I think the hiring and who we want in lab and who would like, I think it will change drastically with these abilities. No?
I don't think so. That I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
ultimately, if you are saying we will hire the student who has the best facility with I don't think that's what's going to happen. Because everybody will have reasonable facility with AI.
No. I'm saying that will not be a factor. I think we will look for something more. We can actually focus on the drive, and we can come up with ways to actually look for the ability to.
Haven't we already been focusing on it?
I don't think as much.
Okay. I mean, see, for example, there are lots of people who
I-
love glib people. I don't love glib people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's an individual preference which will stay the same the way it has been. So for
Exactly.
your lab
But
has been hiring, like taking in all the what should I call it? I don't have words for that, but people who
different people.
are different people, okay, differently thinking people. I think instead of I think we should coin a word. Instead of just having differently abled, we also need like differently thinking people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, the differently thinking people most of the time are actually the thinking people. The others are the non-thinking people.
That's true. That's true.
In today's era, there are very few people left who are actually doing any thinking.
Okay, yes, it's a privileged point of view. Some would argue that
Why?
like
No, but hang on.
yeah,
Doing a PhD is a very privileged thing, right?
yeah.
What fraction of the society is doing a PhD?
No, of course, it's. But we cannot argue that that's a thinking population, right? That's what I'm saying.
No, that's what I'm. No, I fully agree. I'm not
Yeah,
saying that all PhDs who are, you know,
yeah,
doing PhDs are definitely thinking. But what
yeah,
I'm saying is, I try to take the thinking people.
yeah. Thinking people. Yes.
I try
Okay.
not
Yeah.
to take the non-thinking people.
Right. Okay. No, it's a. So, do you think AI would actually help us think more or less in general, or the ones
It
who are
depends
thinking
on
it will
how you
help them
use it.
thinking?
It's a
Yeah,
tool. It's just a tool. Okay.
yeah,
And it all depends on how you will end up using the tool.
right.
That's all.
And also maybe we are in research and in general in this kind of fields we are thinking and using it about too much, right? Like for instance, my parents they don't care about AI. Okay, and a
Yeah,
lot of
but
people
your
I know.
parents are not working either, right? They're not in a profession anymore.
I think there are two kinds of people. One who think AI will help them increase their job or whatever, keep their job, and one who thinks that how AI might take away their job. So,
True.
so, so yeah, that's it was based on a joke, So, my uncle used to say that he was in Delhi, and with his experience, he says in Delhi there are two kind of people. One who come out of their home in the morning, they think whose pocket I will cut, and the other one who's like how I will save my pocket. Okay, so it's
Right.
so it's kind of I was thinking about that in this context. Okay, sir. So I think
Yeah.
we can stop.
Hmm.
We really want to discuss the whole diversity of AI and actually the capabilities and how they might disrupt and disrupting. And I know you have explored a lot of AI, so let's continue this in that
Sure.
context.
And yeah, then we should probably start with AI and stick to AI.
Yeah, we will start with AI. I
We'll
think
start with something else. It will
I
go in
think
a
we don't
different
have any
direction.
more
Huh?
complaints in science, right? These are all right.
Oh, I'm sure we can manufacture more.
Okay,
Stack of PhD students and God knows what else.
right. Okay, sir. This was wonderful.
Hmm.
What should I say to summarize? Uh,
Why should there be a need to summarize? It
that's
was
very
a free
true.
flowing conversation anyway, right? You need a summary or an abstract for a scientific paper.
Yeah. Did
Is there?
Mendel paper had an abstract?
Good question. I don't remember.
Like the origin of species has no summary, right? For
It's a
instance,
book, yeah. It's
no,
not a
I no,
paper.
I know it's a book, but it does not have any.
And
Uh,
Darwin was arguing that that was the summary.
that's true. That's very true. So this we should definitely discuss that how, for instance, I find myself incapable of writing a 2,500 word article. I think it's a disservice to investigation, especially when the ability to publish is like not limited by paper or trees or whatever. So I think, and I think you agree with that we need to go back to the Darwin mode of publication where the summary is a book.
Look, in that case, you need an idea worthy of that length, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have an idea worthy of that length,
Yeah.
then what's the point?
No, but if you get a window of 5 years to actually investigate a problem and work on it in that depth, right, then you can actually have a synthesis like that.
You come up with something that profound,
Yeah.
and you come up with something, that level of detailing as Darwin did, basically preempting every kind of question and giving the answer to that.
Yeah.
You come up with that, and then you write a book length treatment. Power to you. But most of the papers, have you looked at one thing? I don't know about your area, but in several areas that I follow, the quantum of information in the paper actually doesn't justify its length.
Don't get me started. For instance, no, my latest papers, so if you have like a few minutes in my lab, for instance, all the new experiments, we have very large sample sizes. We know that it will take years to complete the projects, but we are going for it. We collect multimodal data, so each subject is basically yielding GBs and GBs of data. We might have terabytes of data for every project, once we do. We need like really massive computation power to do anything about it. And that's in biomechanics. And I'm also publishing all the data for others, slowly giving access. I read papers which just look at, like, for instance, this joint is moving and your elbow joint move one less degree in certain condition or while wearing something. It's a paper in a decent biomechanics journal. Now the question is that what does it even mean if p-value is less than 0.05? What will I do with this? When is that I'm looking for my elbow angle, in my life, or even for a patient? That's a quant of information. So it's not specific to your field. It's specific to every field.
See, we found another thing to crib about.
Yeah.
I told you, right? There's no end.
And the biggest problem which I find with that one is not that, I'm fine with people do whatever. I want to publish, huge data sets and, very massive findings. How to cite those? So
in these cases, review articles are great of the first kind. Where you simply say, look at that review and references therein.
Yeah.
Look at everything over there.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, okay, so every paper we cite, we acknowledge that paper actually has contributed. Okay, I'll accept it. I'm guilty of citing papers because I need a citation. Because a lot of times you are doing completely new stuff, but you need a support for the reviewer or in general. But the data set is not enough to actually conclude because it's such an iota of something.
True. But the problem is that is the only thing that is available which is related to what you are trying to say. Nothing else is available. Happens all the time.
And that gets a preference, by the way, in the preference game because that is published first.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. Anyway, okay, sir.
Yeah. Then it was great.
Great. Yeah, and we'll meet again. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Bye, sir.
Take care.